Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, a little bit of everything. We just started. We're having a lot of fun connection issues. I pressed the live button. I got disconnected. We now press the live button, and Shan got disconnected. So I think we're doing great, guys. So everybody, thank you, and thanks for joining us. Uh, I never do these intros, so I'm really terrible at this. This is actually Michael's. So let's start this again. Welcome to Reptile Rejects. I gotta have a really calm voice like Mike here. Welcome to Reptile Rejects. Welcome to episode 50 something, probably 55, 56, maybe 54. We'll get Mike to correct that later. Mike will not be with us today. It will be me. We've brought on our co-host Shan Melanson to come and help us because he is, often not there. No, I'm just kidding. He's often there to just help us out. And our guest today will be Justin. That being said, Shan, your recording keeps saying that it's failed to start, and it's asking me to get you to refresh. I don't know what that means, but see if you can figure that out on your end while I chat. So yeah, except for that, gents, how are you guys both doing? Shan, Justin?
Doing great. Despite a bit of a heat wave, just celebrated our nation's 250th birthday, so that's quite a not much of a feat compared to some places in Europe and the rest of the world, but we're pretty excited about it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's not bad. I think you guys are pretty close to us. I think we're around that area too, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I was just
great.
watching Last of the Mohicans yesterday, and it kind of, the French English wars and trying to control us rowdy Americans and Canadians, I suppose. So
You
good
can't
times.
control them Americans.
Yeah, we kind of do what we want, whether it's a good thing or not.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way of putting it. I would agree. I would agree.
we
Shan, you
we
on
try
with
to be
us?
good people, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, there he goes again.
Yeah, he's going to keep coming and going. We're going to let him figure that one out.
No
What is
problem.
it? The Canadians and the Americans had one fight ever. I think.
Uh-huh.
Did we ever go?
Yeah.
I think the War of 1912 or 1913 or
Right.
1813,
Right.
1812,
Yeah.
something like that.
My
Anyway,
history skills are not my strong suit, I don't think. But
all I know is that it was like a war with like 25 against 12 or something ridiculous
right.
like that, like tiny little numbers, and Canada won. So that's
Yeah.
that's all that really matters. So as long as that's out there, I mean, if ever we had a war right now, we'd get our ass completely destroyed. But
Well, when you
back
put
then,
the majority of your GDP into the war machine, then you tend to be a pretty strong nation. But
yeah,
not
obviously.
sure.
So if Shan ever figures this shit out, he'll be here to help us out. I mean,
Can you
with
hear
his.
me?
Oh, we can hear you now.
You can hear me, but for some reason it keeps wanting me to refresh for some reason, and I don't know why it's doing that.
Yeah, it says that Sean Belson's recording failed to start. Ask Shan to refresh and try again.
I've
Well,
tried.
it's working right now.
Okay,
How
cool.
about this? If there's anybody in the chat that is online on live, can you just let us know if Shan is working or not for you guys? Yeah, you keep getting me tons of pop up. I don't
This
know.
feature
Uh,
this feature is not available, so I can't do anything. So I can't
as of
click
right
on
now,
anything.
we can hear you, Justin. You can hear him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
you
right,
know what?
cool.
Let's
All right,
let's
let's
just
do it.
leave it as is and see
Sorry
what
about that.
happens. I'm just gonna
No
go.
worries.
Let's check the chat, see if anybody has said that they can't hear you or not.
I'm wondering if it's gonna do anything when we like have to download it later on.
As
But
a
I'm
general rule, it either works or it doesn't. I can hear
uh,
you. I'm gonna assume that it's going through, and I'm gonna hope.
I'm hardwired, so I don't know. I'm like right to the router, so I I don't know much about this kind of stuff. So but,
There you go. Sean just said that they can hear you on streaming, so
okay.
let's just hope it's working.
All right.
Um,
Cool.
so Shan, thanks for joining us. I'm glad it went really, really well, and we're having no issues.
Took a little
Um,
bit of time, but
just a little bit. Eh?
thanks.
Justin, you guys are having a heat wave too. Like here, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's like we're in the plus 30s to plus 35 for the past like a week and a half, 2 weeks. It's insane. Like, and that's Celsius. So I don't know what that does in your crazy Fahrenheit. machine there, but
Yeah.
oh my God, it's horrible.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad. I mean, last week or maybe a week and a half ago, it was really cold. We had a bit of a cold snap, so that was kind of nice and refreshing, especially this time of year. But yeah, it came roaring back this week just in time for the 4th. So yeah, it was nice pool day yesterday at my in-laws. But yeah, otherwise it's been pretty rough. Probably around the same temperatures you guys are experiencing. I guess 35 degrees Celsius is 95 Fahrenheit for all us imperialists out there.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's
the-
probably without the humidex, though.
Yeah. It's pretty dry here in Utah. So that's one thing I enjoy, but I don't know if my, I've experienced the humidity and I can say I'd prefer the dry heat. It's a little more tolerable, I think. But,
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, to top it off, this lovely heat. My heat pump died on Monday. So, and a heat pump does air conditioner as well, right? So,
right.
all of a sudden, I've had no air conditioner now for freaking 5 or 6 days. The kids don't even want to sleep here. They keep going to sleepovers to other places because it's just not tolerable. It's like,
Right.
I'm going to go with, it's about 100 Fahrenheit in the house. So it is disgusting. I like my snake room is actually higher than it's supposed to be as like the base. It went up to like 82, 83. And I'm like, I can't even cool it down. Like, I don't know what to do. And it's in a basement. Like a basement is at 83, which makes no sense. But
yeah, that's scary.
So anyway, I had another guy come in on Tuesday, came in again today to try to boost it. And then all of a sudden he boosts it, big gigantic black cloud appears. I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm getting a new heat pump tomorrow. So really happy.
How old is it?
It was a 2018, which is what blows my mind. Like it's not even old. Like it should not have died. But
and so our government wants us to go with heat pumps, by the way, just letting you know. And I just feel like that's not the way to do it. I'm okay with having a furnace and an AC unit.
Yeah, but
totally okay.
This house had a heat pump, and it's a new house. Well, a new house for me anyway. And it's just my luck. It died, so now I've got another few $1,000s spending to do. So it just kind of pisses me off, but that's it. So how about we go into the what's new in our collection? I've got a pretty big update. Shan, I think you do too. You want to go first?
Yeah, you want to go
first? All right, I'll start with the simple update. I've had 2 clutches since the last time we recorded. Got 2 jungle clutches, so jungle carpets. One is from the German line, and the other one is just Favel line. Both of them are the same father, and both females are obviously different. They're all Ocelot Zebras to Ocelot Zebras, so should be 2 nice clutches full of normals, Ocelots, Ocelot Zebras, and Super Zebras. So 2 great clutches. I'm happy. I wasn't sure if I was going to hit on them. Then all of a sudden, finally, they decided to go. But it makes no sense. Everything is super late in my house, like a month and a half to 2 months later than last year, which is really bizarre because like all my females lay on the same day or like a day before, a day after every year. This time, everything's been really late. So it's been throwing me curveballs. So that's my update on that. My second update is that I was disappointed. I only got 1 clutch of pygmies this year, and both girls have been going every day until I looked in my cages, and I think I'm going to say I pulled a Julander only because I've heard you say this many times. I found dried up eggs in my cage, which really was not a happy sight, but on the flip side of that, I think there was only like 1 or 2 fertile eggs. Everything else was really tiny and hard as a rock. Like they've been in there for a while. They were dry, hard, like almost like that brown hard. Like I feel like it was almost a marble. So I did get another clutch of pygmies, and obviously they're all desiccated and completely useless. I think there was like 7 or 8. But the interesting thing is she still had 1 egg in her. And it was a fertile egg, and I don't know how long it's been in there, right? Because the other ones have been laid such a long time. Had to play with her, and I got it out, which I'm happy about. And there's a reason why I'm saying that. So for a while I've been wondering, um, if you do MI, what happens when they retain an egg? Has
Mhm.
that ever been discussed? Like often I think of you can't pull your girl off the eggs and inspect her and make sure that all the eggs came out, right? She's having MI, you're just leaving her there and you're hoping all goes well and that she pushed them all out. So there's a reason why I'm saying that, and I'm going to get to it after. But my first thought is, does anybody actually pull the female out, check her, and then put her back on the eggs? Thoughts, Justin? No? No, right?
That's a good question. I mean, I remember there was a paper, I think it was Charles et al. With Rick Shine back in 1985, something like that, and they were talking about different wild pythons that they'd been looking at with clutches. They found them during yard maintenance or construction or something, and tried to either relocate them or just kind of check on them, see how they were doing. One female abandoned the eggs and left them because the weather conditions changed or something, so she got out of there just to kind of save her own life and left the clutch. So we do know that. And there were some slugs in one of the clutches. I seem to remember something about retained eggs, but maybe that's my old brain playing tricks on me. But yeah, I mean, I think the same things that we see in captivity do happen in the wild. There are slugs in the wild. There are abandoning eggs in the wild. Not the best mothers or whatever. But I guess that comes first, is the female's life comes before her eggs, I'm sure. Otherwise, you'd probably run out of snakes in the wild. But the wild can be pretty brutal place, especially if you're sitting around a clutch of eggs for a couple months. So I think that's probably, I would suspect there are retained eggs in the wild, and it's often due, at least in my mind, in captivity, to like dehydration, not enough water, not enough fresh water, whatever. And I'm sure that happens in the wild. So I would expect retained eggs might as well. But I don't know. In the cases I've had retained eggs, and they haven't been easily palpable out of the female. I've had some that have passed those eggs, even 5-6 months later, and gotten rid of the egg. And I just found it in the cage, so it was like kind of a sigh of relief type thing. But I think they're pretty good at getting rid of things from their bodies. I think the best example of that is sometimes when transmitters are inserted into, under the muscle and inside the peritoneal cavity. Sometimes those have worked their way out through the bowels and out of the snake. So like they do pretty good about getting rid of stuff that's foreign. Although, we've also seen the opposite happen, where females that have retained eggs will die as a result of that. So I guess it just depends on the female, the situation. I was lucky, I guess, in that case, where the female eventually passed that egg. I think it was a woma, if my memory serves correctly. But I've had that a couple times where females retained eggs, and often I'll just kind of let it go, can see what happens. If it's not easily just pressed out in a few minutes, I'll just kind of let it go and see. And typically they've been passed. I don't think I've lost a female because of it. But
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, so I've had a lot of females with one retained eggs. I'd say
Mhm.
1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 females would have one egg that didn't pass.
Right.
And all of them, I've been able to just work it out within 30 seconds, right? It's just a matter of having your finger just in that ventral area and just keep pushing slowly, right? And you see the cloaca slowly open and then pop comes out.
Yeah.
And I've hatched out a lot of those eggs. I've had no issues. So,
Hmm.
so the main reason, there's a reason why I'm going down this road. So this year, I told everybody I would try an MI clutch, right?
Mhm.
And I have never done an MI in Bragman over 25 years. Never. Like, to me, it makes no sense. In my head, you're just putting more risks on the animal. You're making her suffer for an extra 60 days. You're unable to check on them, to control anything, really. Like, it's basically the control freak in me is just like nothing works.
Yeah.
So I tried it. The other pygmy had,
Okay.
I don't know, 8 or 9 eggs, and she's been on there for about 30 days. Well, I've been checking on them slowly, and every time I check, like 1 or 2 more have rotted out, and so I think I was down to like 4 left. And after another week and a half, I checked on them, and they are all brown, disgusting, and done. So I decided to pull her off, and the clutch is completely done. So the first thing I'm going to say is that is my one attempt ever at a MI clutch. I am not an MI fan, and I will never do it again because I've now tried it. I can now say I've destroyed an entire clutch of pygmy pythons. And
but why choose pygmy pythons? Why didn't you choose like a carpet python clutch?
I don't
Maybe
know.
you would have had like so. Justin, maybe you can answer that for me. Is it easier? Have you ever MI'd like pygmy pythons?
Yeah. We actually,
Wow.
I put in a temperature probe in the middle of the clutch, so we also have a graph of the temperature cycling within the clutch during incubation, and that's part of the complete children's python book. One of the temperature graphs that we got for that was with pygmy pythons, and I've done MI with Stimsons and children's, and I think I've done it with spotteds as well, but so most of the Antaresia, and it's gone pretty well. Like they do pretty good job at incubating their eggs, and I guess I'd maybe challenge Dom's thought process there, of torture and things. When something's evolved millions of years to do something, I think that might be, kind of the default. They're not used to having their eggs taken away by a big monkey, so that might be but I agree that it's nice to have that kind of control and peace of mind having the eggs in the incubator, but I mean I've lost plenty of eggs in the incubator too. Sometimes the clutch is just bad, and it doesn't matter if it's MI or artificially incubated, it's going to die regardless, because whatever didn't happen, and so the eggs weren't going to make it from the beginning. So I don't know that I would necessarily give up. It's really cool to see the babies kind of emerge from the clutches. But I was listening to Ryan Young. He crashed a Lucas Lee interview on one of the podcasts, and was talking about when females aren't laying eggs or things like that. He said that he got advice from the Barkers to do like a hard reset, where you pretty much fast them for 6 months, and put them kind of through that hardwired reset type scenario where they're like, okay, things are tough, and now I've got resources again, so maybe it's time to reproduce, and those kind of things. I mean, wild pythons, we spoil our snakes quite a bit, I'm sure. Like they're not used to getting weekly meals, especially for the majority of the year. Like there might be a time during the year when they're getting lots of food, but I think a lot of times we kill them with kindness. We're too easy on them, and that results in obesity and probably more reproductive issues than if we kept them more similar to what their natural history has kind of pushed them to evolve into. But that's also not a complete thing either, because I know Ben Morrill, he's my old business partner. He did some studies with, or he actually took the records from the snake keeper and was evaluating those, scientifically as part of his PhD to see, what maybe the ultimate amount of food to give a ball python for reproduction. And I think he kind of concluded that you can't give a ball python too much food. Basically, like you would go broke before you gave them too much food. Now they're definitely periodic feeders. They're only eating heavily, a few months out of the year. So the long-term consequences of like weekly feedings or feeding them, a couple rats a week every week might not be the best case scenario either. Where, kind of those cyclical feeders, that might be more natural, but it's hard to say conclusively until we do a few more studies, I guess. If that makes sense.
No, it does, and
Absolutely.
I'm not saying MI doesn't work. I'm saying MI didn't work for me. Let's
in one instance, yeah.
And I wasn't trying to like put anything down. I just feel like maybe the pygmy is very fragile. Like, I mean, I'm the one. So Dom is the one that has them and breeds them, gives
Mhm.
gets the eggs to hatch, and then I get the babies, and I get to deal with all the feeding part.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes they're very fragile, right? So I was just only saying that and not in a bad way, but just like taking such a fragile. I mean, I guess they reproduce in wild, right? I guess. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, in pretty
But
harsh situation. I don't know that
absolutely,
fragile is a
right.
good descriptor for them. They're
I just
they're a
I
little
just feel
tricky in some ways, but yeah.
compared to like a carpet python, right? Where
Yeah.
they're, I don't know. I just
The
feel
small size, yeah. I mean, more surface area, easier to
harder
dehydrate. I
to
mean,
get
but
the
they come
babies going.
right, right.
I found it was hard to get them going.
On
I
rodents for
found
sure. Yeah, if you want to
I
feed them lizards,
find
the
I finally got them going with gizzards. Like I
uh,
filleted a little piece of gizzard for a little bit
uh-huh.
and get them going on that a little bit,
Hmm.
and then I give them like day old mice or ASFs,
Right.
really warm this
Hmm.
year, and they took pretty quick. So,
Nice.
and once you get
Yeah.
them on food, yes, they are pretty
No,
somewhat
they're
easy.
bulletproof. Yeah, they're pretty straightforward. Except
See,
if they've been going for a while without food, and then you get them feeding, sometimes they're still a little sensitive or could have issues. But yeah.
I had one this year that had a lump,
Hmm.
and I had never seen that. It was a baby with a lump, and
Hmm.
I did everything with all the other. I actually have a picture somewhere. I should have sent it to you, but and it just progressed and it died, and it wasn't poop
Hmm.
left over. It was
Hmm.
still pooping, but I showed it to you, Dom. Remember, it had that lump. Anyway, yeah, I was wondering if that was something that you've seen in the past or just a fluke, or I don't know, it's hard to
Probably, yeah,
say.
probably just some sort of incubation issue who knows? It's once in a while you'll see those things pop up where they have a lump or misformation or kink or
So
something like that.
this was after feeding for a few times, so
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
wasn't born like that.
Yeah,
It was off. I've
yeah.
also found that a few times I've had few babies fall off like 3 or 4 months after they start feeding.
Hmm.
But I remember the last time you were on, you were talking about bringing up the heat, and I brought up the heat a little bit
Hmm.
because they got like heat tape, like they're basically in a rack, right? So I brought
Right,
up the my heat tape to about like a 93. I don't want to go 95 because I also have other carpets in there. So,
right.
but a 93, and they doing so much better. So
Yeah.
I've I've gotten better with that. So
That's good. Yeah, that they
no,
can be a trick for sure. I had probably my best year this last year of getting all the babies
gotcha.
to feed, and I was excited to go again this year, but I got skunked on my. I missed or yeah, I missed a clutch on the pygmies. I was out of town and they laid eggs, so I was like, of course, But I was assuming she'd wrap around them, but I think there were a lot of slugs in there, so I don't know how good the clutch was. We had a really warm winter, so I think that kind of threw things a little bit for incubation. Although I did just get a clutch of eggs from my Brettles pythons this week, 24 eggs from a female that I I kind of hadn't bred for a couple years because I still, I usually don't breed them until I feel there's a need to sell more babies or whatever, that
Yeah.
and so paired them up again, and yeah, she usually lays a little earlier, but yeah, it was kind of late. And I was not holding my breath that they would go because of the warm winter, but yeah, they went, and it looks like I might have diamond eggs here soon as well. I'm hoping that she lays a good clutch as well, but we'll see. Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into incubation and that can mess it up, but for the most part I think it's pretty straightforward as far as pythons go. But I think there's improvements we can make for sure. And you know um with maternal incubation, I messed up my first maternal incubation as well, and it was with some children's pythons, and I had them on a substrate that was too wet, and so that caused the kind of bottom layer of eggs to rot. And then actually the top layer turned out and they hatched out okay, but then the female wasn't. She had a couple skin issues and things because she'd been laying on that wet substrate. So just kind of rookie mistake. This was back in what, 2000, 2001, somewhere around there. So a little while ago. And that was my first python clutch. So I thought, oh, I'll just let her do what nature intended, kind of thing. And just messed up the setup. So that was on me for sure. And, I guess I ascribe to kind of the something wrong happens in captivity. It's probably my fault or something I did wrong that caused that to happen. But and of course, in Dom, I don't fault you. Like if you're good at hatching out eggs in the incubator, then you're probably right. There's not really a need to let them MI. I just think it's kind of cool, to see.
It is cool. And just so we're clear,
Yeah.
Justin, I'm faulting myself. I know it was 100% me because she
Right.
wrapped them perfectly. She was dedicated. I've unwrapped her like once a week. I'd unwrap her just to look at the eggs, and she'd go right back and she'd be perfectly fine just because I wanted to see how they were doing. Um, I think my problem is 100% the humidity was too high. And I used to keep my pygmies with not a very high humidity, but I kept having shedding issues. Like they would shed in pieces, and I'd have to give them baths for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to try to manage. And then I just started increasing the humidity in there. And then they've been shedding perfectly fine for the past year or two. And so I've been keeping the humidity much higher. Now, maybe because of that, it's probably detrimental to eggs. It was probably just way too wet, way too humid. That's what I'm thinking. I probably should have just stopped keeping it as humid as I was during that time. I'm assuming that's what my problem is, but
I mean, eggs typically do well with high humidity as long as the substrate's not wet. That's the killer is if the humidity condenses and lands on the eggs or is in the substrate too much. Although Ryan Young was talking about spraying his eggs back when he first started. He would spray down his clutches of carpet eggs or whatever he was incubating. And I was like, man, I'm surprised that worked, but I think we have a lot of these things in herpetoculture that's like, I don't know, old wives' tales or, these things that become doctrine, but haven't been proven one way or another, but we just do them because the first person that bred them did it. And so we just try to replicate that and nobody ever questions it. We just do the same things over and over again. And I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But at the same time, I think you get kind of curious. Hey, is that really necessary? Do we need to walk around the incubator 3 times to make sure that it's going to, incubate our eggs successfully or something? Or is that just something somebody did once and the eggs hatch? So we keep doing that, just, so I don't know. There's a lot of things that probably aren't necessary, or probably we could do them another way and have just as much success or more success. But, we don't want to risk what we have to advance that knowledge. And that a lot of times you see those jumps forward because somebody does take a risk or somebody does something out of the ordinary that they normally wouldn't do, and it pays off, and now we can change and do things a little better. I don't know. I see that was kind of one of the motivations for writing that green tree python book, was that, I just saw so much, like, I guess, failure, or the green tree pythons just didn't do that great. Like you would think there'd just be tons produced and it wouldn't be a big deal, but it was very, you just saw a lot of like giant clutches with a lot of slugs, and the females would die pretty quickly or unexpectedly, and they were overweight or tail hanging or all sorts of different things, and we were trying to fit them into a box that they didn't necessarily fit in, and questioning, well, why are we going so wrong, or why are these things not living very long? And I think it's just we're doing it wrong and we need to change our ways. But it's just it's what you know, and they got it to work, so I should be able to get it to work too, and we just keep going down the same path. So it's a tricky problem for sure.
Yeah, just to go back on the point that you said that, geez, how did I just forget his name? What's the breeder you brought up there?
Ryan? No,
Wow. Yes. Thank you.
Ryan Young.
Ryan Young sprays his eggs, but Ryan Young can breed anything and get anything to go. So I think it doesn't apply to everybody else. Like he can manage to do anything with anything. So I would never spray on the eggs. I feel like spraying directly on the eggs, you're just asking for rot or for anything like that. Like to me, that's a no go. And as for continuing or advancing. I feel like doing MI for me, that's what it was for me, right? It's something I've
Right.
never done. It's something I've
Mhm.
never tried. I've hatched out pygmy pythons so many times by with the incubator that I had to try it, and now I failed miserably. And I'm okay with it. I mean,
Right.
I'm not happy about it, but it just means that either I'm going to give up or I'm going to try better and make sure that my environment is better because it's 100% my fault. So I know, I'm pretty sure it was just too humid, and you work on it from there.
Right.
So anyway, that was my valiant attempt at MI that just crashed and burned. Will I try it again in the future? Maybe. Might be a few years till I do it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of my update on my end. Except for that, I had a second clutch of inlands hatch out.
Mhm.
Um, so I've had my two clutches hatched out. They did pretty well. Lovely babies. Only problem is one of them came out with weird deformity in the back end.
Mm.
Like not in the tail, like really like maybe I don't know, 75% down his body. Just it's like if the ribs become flat and he's got like a butterfly rounded
Mhm.
platform and then it goes back to normal. Everything
Mhm.
else was normal, but I decided to euthanize them. I don't know what I would do with that. I feel like that's type of animal should not be kept alive or should not be bred or should not be passed on. So, but except for that, everything else hatched out great. So I've got two partially unrelated clutches of inlands. They have the same male, just different females. So
Mhm.
50% related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the
Uh,
background on those? Where'd you get them from?
so the first one, so my male is a, geez, not Mog. What's the other one there?
Harris or
No,
Schofield?
Schofield.
there you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So my male is a Schofield. He's got more of the bluish tints and the darker colors.
Mhm.
The first female that bred was a Mog, so she's
Mhm.
got a little bit more of that copper. And the second female we got from UK Python, which is 25% Schofield and 75% different lineage from Europe that is not one of the typical ones,
Mhm.
is what
Okay.
I am told. It comes from it has a possible shady background that is a different bloodline, is the best way to put it.
Right.
So I'm just calling it UK bloodline.
Right. Right.
But he wouldn't go too much into detail on it, but he said it's pure. It is not related to the other bloodlines.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Well,
So
it means the same. Yeah, it means what we think it means.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to say it, but it is what I think it is. So, but either way, it's so they're all somewhat a little bit mixed. I have no like two pure Schofields or two pure Mogs. So all my
Right.
lines will all be always mixed, and it is what it is. I'm
Yeah.
perfectly fine with that. I mean, it does really. It's still an inland's an inland, just different bloodlines.
Right. Right.
So
For sure.
yeah. Who wants to go next on their updates on their collection? Shan,
I'll go.
Justin.
I'll go.
All
That's
right,
fine.
there you go.
That's fine. I'm not gonna. So pretty much the same thing as Dom. I had the same kind of clutches as he does because we have pretty much the same stuff. So first clutch that actually hatched was my German line jungle carpet python to the Favo line. Beautiful babies. I think I had 10 that actually hatched out of 12 eggs. The two supers though, I I don't know for what reason, but they have a little bit of a slight kink at the bottom of the tails. Both of them are eating. I think the rest of the babies are going to be amazing looking. They're just starting to eat. They just had their first shed. Um, Color is going to be awesome. If anything is like the German line is always like very bright. And then the next clutch that I had that actually hatched was the Bonnie. So Bonnie is my German ocelot Fable line carpet python, and she's really bright. And if you look at her, she's amazing looking. And to the original father, so Dom gave me a male a few years back. That was the original male that kind of produced all our babies, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the I still been hanging on to him because I lost. So Bonnie, I had a Bonnie and Clyde, and I lost my Clyde. So I've had to have the male stick around a little bit. And he produces really great babies. Anyway, so great clutch there. Babies look really amazing. There's a few of them that look like Bonnie, so she's very speckled.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty amazing. They haven't eaten. They just shed. They're not even shedded. So we're just waiting on that, and then I'll start feeding. They're pretty easy to get going.
Yeah.
I had a clutch of Brettles this week myself. So, so the male is the genetic stripe, and she's just a regular. She looks really high red, but I don't know the lineage. So,
Mm-hmm.
amazing looking. It's her first time. I had 17 eggs, no slugs, so really good.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I did put them in the incubator. I haven't gone to that point. Eventually, I might. Am I? But I haven't. I'm still got lots to learn. How's that?
No. Yeah, that's
Uh,
I think we all do for sure.
Last but not least, I do have a spotted clutch that's probably due in the mid July, probably around July 20th.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited. It's my first time, so can't wait to
Cool.
see babies.
Yeah.
The eggs have really like sunken in, but I'm still think they're going to be fine. They're not
Mm-hmm.
rotting out. I feel they're going to be really small.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now I don't know how hard they're going to be to feed these guys. I've heard spotted are pretty easy to feed,
Yeah.
but we'll see
Yeah.
how they are.
I haven't had any trouble with spotteds for the most part. They just take off pretty quick.
I have
And
I have the most access to anything. I breed my own stuff, so
Mm-hmm.
I breed ASFs, I breed mice, I breed rats of
Yeah.
any size. So if I need live or anything,
and
Yeah.
Shan, the parents. So I've had
yeah,
a couple of clutches, and you have the babies from my clutches, and
yes,
all of them ate perfectly fine the first time,
awesome.
zero issues. So you have babies from all clutches and adults that had zero issues. So honestly, I think it'll be the simplest animals to get going. They're good. They're the complete opposite of pygmy pythons. They're amazing.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, so I was just gonna say that's all I have for updates.
Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned, I got Brettles eggs, and they're hypoline to hypoline type thing. So I bred this pair before, and they had some really killer babies that turned out really nice, and then some that were kind of nice, but not the super hypo-y looking things. So I think it's just that whole percentage thing, whatever the whatever you want to call it, but seems like the nice ones looked pretty similar to the one that we saw in the wild, so maybe wild type would be a good rather than hypo. And all the other stuff is just melanistic. Is that a hot take or what? But real so I'm excited to see what hatches out of those, and I did take them and put them in the incubator. So I haven't mi'd bred eye before, but and it worked great. Had a really nice successful hatch rate with those, but I didn't feel like she was in the right setup for that. That's part of it, is just making sure that the cage can support it, and I just didn't feel it would be too great for her. So I took the eggs. But she wasn't wrapped around them either. So I think she was in the process of laying them when I went in there and saw the eggs. So because she hadn't laid anything the day prior, so I just assumed that she was finishing laying and then she'd hopefully wrap them up. But I just grabbed them. Some of them were a little cold, so I'm like, yeah, I don't want to. Anytime an egg sits outside the like that in the open is usually a recipe for disaster. So I'm curious to see if any are going to start kicking the bucket here soon, or if they're going to make it the distance. But we'll see what happens there. I just checked the incubator and I had an inland that had hatched, so it was kind of a bit of a train wreck clutch there. She wasn't wrapped around the eggs very well, and so most of the eggs died during incubation. But I was happy to see at least one or two will likely hatch there. I also had a wheat belt clutch, wheat belt Stimson's pythons. I still ascribe to the Stimson's python moniker, but I'll call them wheat belt Stimsons. But some one of the clutches I have incubating hatched out. Have another couple that are following that one. Some jungles are due to hatch any day. They're kind of sinking in and looking like they're gonna hatch anytime. All the increased moisture in the incubation container is piling up, so I'm expecting those to hatch any day now here too. They were all laid on the same day with the jungle, the wheat belts, and the inlands were all found on the same day. I don't know if they were laid on the same day, but so yeah, hopefully we'll have some nice jungles here in a bit as well. But yeah, so things are going pretty well this season. The other notable clutch I had out is the pygmy banded pythons, formerly called pygmy Stimsoni, which are kind of that Cape York locality. Interesting Antaresia. I think it's a undescribed species, whereas current research may disagree with me, and they're just another form of childrenii. But man, they have different scale counts. They're different size. They're much smaller than majority of childrenii out there. They have a unique, like pretty consistent pattern. You can pick them up out of a lineup pretty easily. Their relative clutch mass is absolutely huge. They have giant eggs, and the babies are big. The babies are pretty feisty, and fortunately, I got 4 out of 6 of them to eat, the first try. So that was nice. I'd heard they were pretty difficult to get feeding, and maybe I just got lucky this year and they'll be difficult next time. But really cool looking babies. Got this kind of zebra-y pattern to them. They're really nice looking animals. So excited.
I was gonna ask you how the feeding trials were. I was curious to see if they would align more with the pygmies or more with children's, because children's usually are pretty easy to feed as well, right?
Yeah, they can be hit or miss. Like some babies take pretty quickly and others maybe hold off a little bit. I guess that's what I'm seeing with these. But yeah, nothing like a pygmy. I mean, I don't think anything's as difficult as a pygmy, except maybe black-headed python. Those make me tear my hair out as well.
So your pygmy bandits, are they similar in size as a pygmy, or are they slightly bigger?
They're a little bit bigger, but not much. Like I think my female that produced this clutch was 135 or 160 grams after she laid her clutch, right? So that's her base weight, and then the clutch weighed, I think it was like half that, like 80 grams or something like that. It was pretty crazy. So pretty good size, maybe 65 grams for the clutch weight, if I remember right. So yeah, pretty crazy relative clutch mass for those animals. And the babies are pretty good sized as well, like much bigger than a pygmy python, but also seems like they're maybe bigger than a children's python baby as well. I didn't have any children's python's eggs this year for a direct comparison, but maybe I can compare them with the wheat belt Stimson, since they're just children's, right?
I was to say, it's hard to compare with just one clutch, because sometimes you can have a clutch of one type of snake that's, let's say 10 grams, and the same type of snake from another mother, and they're like 18 or 19 grams, right? Like I've had some carpet pythons, the entire clutch were tiny, and other ones where they're just
Mm-hmm.
ridiculously big, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's
There's seems to be a couple different reproductive mechanisms with female pythons where they'll lay a lot of smaller eggs or fewer larger eggs, and I'm not sure what promotes that or causes that to happen. Could be, I mean, they're capital breeders, right? So that they base their reproductive output on the nutrition and whatever they've gotten through the year in terms of feeding, and that factors into that formula, whatever it may be. But so I don't know if you switch up your feeding schedule, but I pretty much feed all my snakes kind of the same way. So I don't know. I guess I can expect maybe them to all have similar, either large clutch type scenario or small clutch type scenario. It seems like they've just had regular size clutches or good size eggs. So maybe I'm the latter of those two. But yeah, it's hard to say.
all I'll say is that feeding does really change the clutch size. Like I used to feed like crazy. I fed a lot, and I've had ridiculous size clutches. Like I've had 2 or 3 clutches in the 40s, low 40s with
Wow.
carpet pythons. I've had multiple in the 30s, and in the past couple of years, I've been really honestly, I'm almost to the point where I'm saying I think I don't feed often enough. I probably should start feeding more because I'm busy. I forget. I'm like,
Right.
they'll be fine. They'll be fine. And when I look at the females, they're still chunky. So I don't feel the need to keep feeding them. But all my clutches are so much smaller now. Like so much smaller. Like I'd say my average of all my clutches this year have been around 9 or 10 eggs. When if you would have asked me that, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, they would have been 25 to 30 as my average. Like it's
Wow.
like it's so I really do think that the feeding, the amount of probably has a lot to do with it. Or I don't know, maybe my females are all much smaller. Like because I tend to, I don't know about you. I don't know if you just keep females forever for 30 years. Like I have some of those girls that I've had for a really long time, but a lot of them are always just new girls that have, better genetics than the first one, or is brighter, is more pretty, is more hypo, et cetera, et cetera. So I keep bringing up new girls that come up, and I don't know. My new girls from 8 years ago would have 25 eggs. Now my new girls have 8 to 10 eggs. So
are the egg sizes about the same, or
I'd say they're identical. Yeah, they're
really okay.
Yeah, so
that's interesting. Yeah, probably just resource.
Yeah,
it's
my
get to
assumption.
feed.
So I think with my German girl this year, it was her first time, and I feel like the eggs were very small. Just I feel like this year coming, if I breed her this year coming, I think they'll be bigger and better. I think I remember Bonnie's first clutch that she had was not that great. The small babies and everything. Now when I get her babies, they're much bigger. So I don't know if that just maturity, a little bit more food. Not the first clutch. I feel like maybe better. I'm not 100% sure about that, but
yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna say you often hear that the first clutch, she didn't have a good clutch because it's her first clutch or things like that. I feel like that statement is wrong. Maybe we can get your outlook on it after, Justin. But I feel like if you look at it as reproduction or as evolution, like pumping out your first clutch as a bad clutch would be just a bad thing because a lot of females will be picked off or die or might even only reproduce once in their lifetime. So I feel like a young female that is sexually mature that has eggs should have her best clutch to start with, and in time only get worse, right? Like, unless I'm wrong, that's the way I feel like it should go. So you often hear people say like, "Oh, it's her first clutch; it wasn't great." I think it's the contrary. Like your first clutch should be like all fertile eggs, and then maybe when she's bred 6 times, then you're going to get like only like 30% or 10% fertility, right? But I don't know. Am I wrong in that thinking?
No, I mean I think that's a reasonable thought. Why would they put in any effort if it's just going to always suck the first time? So And I think you're right. Like the evolutionary drive is to produce as many offspring as you can as quickly as you can, and some species mature a little slower. Now, the difference between like a wild female is there's probably several males that are, courting and potentially fertilizing her eggs. We know that pythons can have multiple paternity to a single clutch. That's been shown, through the morph thing with ball pythons, where they can show that different males have contributed to a single clutch. So there's sperm storage in the wild as well. I think Warren Booth just had a paper come out about long-term sperm storage. I think with Gordon Schuett maybe, but there's a lot of factors that go into it compared to in captivity, where we have one male and one female and we put them together when we think they're ready, or we may not have cycled the male properly, so maybe he didn't get cold enough and his sperm are not as motile, or so we see a lot of slugs or something like that, some kind of captivity factor in there where it reduces the success of, compared with what would happen in the wild. But I would agree, in the wild, in the natural state, it's probably maybe not perfect, but much closer to ideal than we get in captivity. But I don't know that anybody's quantified that. But yeah, there is kind of that dogma that, oh yeah, it's a first clutch, so it's probably not going to be great. But I don't know that I've had too much of that. But I also am not in a huge hurry to get them bred. But I will say with that pygmy banded python, when they got here from England, I got them like, oh, these are big, like they're ready to breed. So I paired them, in the winter, and they produced and had a great, 6 eggs hatched. No dramas, and it was her first clutch. So yeah, not a big deal at all. So I think a lot of times if it is a train wreck or a bad first clutch, instead of blaming ourselves where the blame should lie, we're saying, oh, they were first time breeders, or oh, this or that or the other, where it's like, well, we didn't do our job well enough to support their reproduction. Or maybe there might be a case for if we pushed them too soon to reproduce too young or at a smaller size. But I think in the wild too, like they're finding they would import females, these small female ball pythons, and they'd be gravid, and we're like, oh, I thought they only reproduced when they're X grams heavy or whatever.
Yeah, but that tiny female might be 7 years old, when that
Right.
tiny female could be 3-month-old in captivity for a ball python, because they can get them sexually mature at ridiculous amount of time, right? So I think that might be the difference. I think in that case, it's not a size problem; it's more an age issue.
But again, if we're the ones who are, feeding them in a way that they wouldn't experience in the wild, then, if they're multiple generations captive bred and they're approaching, a more of a domestication status, then maybe that factors into that as well, where we're seeing that with ball pythons, where we're getting eggs anytime, any month of the year. You can see ball python eggs potentially, if depending on how you're keeping them. And so like that kind of factors in as well, where the way we keep them definitely has some sort of output or result in their reproduction. So, but I think if you kept them and again, in the wild, the males aren't asking for an ID before they try to breed a female, but she could potentially escape, and get away. Whereas in a cage, she doesn't really have as much of a choice or a means of getting away from that male. So it's hard to say.
I feel like a male wouldn't go after a female if she wasn't sexually mature, right? Like she wouldn't be putting out those pheromones that actually would attract a male. But maybe I'm wrong. But
I think that's reasonable. Yeah.
And on another note, I like I do think in captivity when we have bad clutches from females, it's usually because we tried to push them, get them too big too fast, and they're too young to breed, right? And like you hear that too, and I believe that to a certain extent. But like one of my clutches of jungles this year, I'm not gonna lie, she's a young female. She's
Mhm.
just under 3 years old, and she was not very big, and she had 10 perfect eggs and full
Yeah.
size, and she's already bounced back, and she looks great. And I decided to try her because I was like, yeah, she's big enough. She's not very big, but she's big enough. And you know what? It worked, and she still had a perfect first clutch. So,
Right.
uh,
So maybe what I was trying to say is the egg size on one was not the same as the other because she had perfect eggs. She didn't have slugs and they all hatched except two of them rotted out.
Hmm.
So if anything, she was 3 years old. I'll blame it on me. Maybe I didn't give her enough food, but at the same time, I'm not one to super pump them up, and I might have did that a long time ago because I thought that was the way of doing it. I think we all thought that was the right way to doing it, right? But
Hmm.
I try to wait at least till they're three. I think she'll do better next year. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, we don't know a lot of what's going on in the life of a juvenile carpet python, or I don't know that anybody's really followed them and tracked how much they're eating and those kind of things. So, where they're eating skinks are pretty plentiful. They might be eating a ton. They might be eating several things a week, just leaner, smaller meals, but the growth rate might be. It's hard to say until we've really quantified that. So, um, but obviously on a diet of laboratory rodents, they could probably bulk up a little quicker than they could eating skinks in the wild. But again, one of those kind of black boxes that we don't know for sure, so we're guessing a little bit. um, I know they've
so
tracked
oh no, go ahead.
maybe what think they did some tracking of mark and recapture studies with green tree pythons. They did some camera trapping, watching behaviors in green tree pythons. I think they saw one actually try to eat a moth at one point or snap at a moth that was flying around it. So there's a lot of um, it seemed like their growth rate of a wild green tree python was pretty slow. That they weren't eating a lot in the wild, and so that might be part of why they're, at least that was kind of my hypothesis of why they weren't doing great in captivity, was because we were feeding them too much and trying to treat them like a Burmese python or something, keeping them at 90 degrees. Whereas in their habitat, I've been fortunate to be up to go up to Cape York, into the Iron Range, and see a couple wild green tree pythons, and it was 70 degrees in the forest, and that's pretty much in the canopy where you're going to find an adult green tree python. It's pretty consistent around that 70 to 82, 78 to 82 degree range, which is, I don't know what it is in Celsius, but 20, 28, something like that. So I think I think we can definitely learn from their natural history, and I think that's important to understand it, so we can maybe figure out what we're doing wrong. But again, we can do things a lot of different ways, and I think that the ball python is kind of proving that point where they're getting easier and easier to reproduce. The babies start off on rodents pretty quickly, which they probably do in the wild as well, and then they're growing fairly quickly, which they also may do in the wild as well. But um, and then they're kind of asynchronous reproduction, which is more of a feature of domestication. So yeah, changing things a bit with keeping them in captivity. They used to be very difficult or impossible to breed, and now it's probably the most commonly bred snake or python in the U.S. and throughout the world.
yeah, it's kind of cool. Eh? It's kind of crazy to think about it because, like, well, I'm not going to say you're old, but you're as old as me. We are all old men. So when you think about it back then, like a ball python it's crazy to think as a ball python is not an easy species to breed because you couldn't, like, nobody bred them back then. Like, it
Right.
wasn't even that simple. So I almost wonder if I could have bred a ball python in the 90s because I had a male and I had a female, but I never even considered putting them together. That's the crazy part.
Right.
um, yeah. Anyway, just yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
think too, like your comment about, when I said they don't check for IDs, I would probably agree that a wild python is probably trying to find females that are giving off, pheromones or whatever kind of signal that they're reproductively ready. They're probably not wanting to waste their energy or efforts on a female who's not reproductively ready. That makes a lot of sense, I would say. And there have been some cases where there was somebody keeping a diamond python in captivity, and all of a sudden, there's this male sitting on the top of her cage, and he's like, "Oh, one of my males must have got loose." And he looked through all the cages, and everybody was accounted for. It was a wild diamond that had crawled in through the window and went on top of the female's cage because she was cycling, and so he could tell from wherever distance he came from that there was a reproductive female ready, and he was going to go find that female, and he did, but he just couldn't get into the cage to breed with her. So kind of they definitely have things that are going on that we don't necessarily know or can see, except through some behaviors like that. And that was kind of the reason that I've been a proponent of keeping pairs together year round. I don't really I keep a lot of animals together throughout the year, except maybe when the female's getting ready to lay eggs, I'll pull the male out of there so it doesn't complicate anything. But um, the fact that then, I don't see a lot of breeding because they're in tune with the cycle of the female, and so breeding is not going to be a long drawn out process. It's going to be pretty quick, and copulation or two and they're done. So I'm pretty lucky if I see copulation in my captives. But when I do keep them separate and introduce, throughout uh, the winter or whatever, then I will see kind of that more frequent copulation. The female may not be ready yet or something like that, but when I keep them together, then I don't see that a lot.
um, I gotta have two places I kind of want to go. One place at one point is I want to actually go over what your collection is because we hear you talking about different snakes all the time, but I actually have no idea. Do you keep like 20 snakes or do you have a 200 snake collection or even more? I've always wondered that because you don't really talk about how big your collection. I'm kind of curious. Let's start with that one. I'm actually,
Sure.
how big is it?
It's I'm closer to 200 than 20. The exact count I don't really have on hand, but yeah, in the hundreds, low hundreds, I'm sure. I keep all the different Antaresia species, and for carpets, I'm breeding Brettles, inlands, jungles, um, diamonds now, hopefully soon. But mostly it's like a pair or two. I don't have like a huge number, except for some species like wheatbelt Stimson's pythons. I have quite a large collection of those snakes. Most of the breeders I don't even pair for the most part. I'm trying to refine or to try to see what I get from certain pairings, but I'm not pairing a lot of my original snakes. I should probably move them on, but I'm kind of a sentimental keeper as well, and um, so I like to keep some of those animals just maybe more as pets where they've produced a few years, and I just kind of say, okay, well, I don't need to keep breeding the same females over and over. So I'm kind of just keeping them as pets at this point. But I've also got some blackheads and womas, just one pair of Western blackheads. Although I did keep a pair back from them that they produced. It was a the incubation room, my heater malfunctioned in that room, so the room got up to like 100 degrees, and so I had some black-headed python eggs in the incubator. That was the first clutch, and so I was basically turning on the incubator for the first time that year because the eggs kind of surprised me a bit. And then I hatched out 2 babies that had like really small eyes. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to send those anywhere. It's not a genetic thing. It's just an incubator malfunction thing. So I've kept those back, and they're stellar, beautiful black-headed females. They're just black and white banded, really beautiful. But so they stayed here. So I've got those raised up, and I've kept them together for the most part. Just I know it's I don't know. I guess with inbreeding and that kind of thing, with sibling pairing and stuff, I don't think it's as big of a problem that most people think it is. And unless you have a deleterious gene somewhere in the mix, it's probably not a big deal at all. Like I obviously it'd be nice if we could outbreed a bit, but when we have limited genetic sampling, or we just don't have a lot of diversity in our captive populations of certain species, and Western blackheads tend to be one that just came from a low number of founding stock, so it's hard to diversify much. But yeah, though I've had a rough go with the womas. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I did miss a clutch of womas this year, to Dom's point, but so I don't have any womas that I will be producing this year. I keep thinking this other female is gravid, but she never lays for me. So I think they're just old, and then I've got a younger pair that should be productive in the coming years as well. So so I've got a few pairs of womas, but just a pair, and then a younger pair of the blackheads. And then I've got a few lizards, just a handful of geckos. I do have a Nephurus asper, the prickly knobtail gecko, that I've got an egg incubating from those. I got those a couple years back. And then I've got a couple other different knobtail types. I've got some Egernia, some of the pygmy spiny tail geckos that are pretty cool. 3 different species of those. Oh, I just got a 4th species, so I have some Gidgee skinks as well. So, but the Egernia are really cool. I've been fortunate to see a few of those in the wild as well, and so that kind of what drives my collection. I just picked up a pair of Carinata, so I've got some rough-scaled pythons again. I had some a while back that I got for a customer in Europe, but then they wouldn't issue me export permits that they had done for Nick the year before. So I assumed it would be no problem for me, but they denied any permits after that for some reason. I think Nick had a guy that was kind of happy to give permits, and then the person that replaced him was not very nice in giving permits. So it's kind of a weird thing where you have personal preference dictating whether or not you get permits. So I kind of gave up that after that whole debacle. I said, well, I guess I don't need to export. So I guess long story short, I had to sell those within the country, or the guy that I was shipping them to, he had bought the animals, and so he sold them, and they went to a friend in the US, and then he's produced quite a few rough scales. So I still need to talk to him, find out if these came from that pair or not. But so it's nice to have rough scales in the collection again. But I do have 2 pairs of locality California king snakes that come from southwestern Utah. That's my only colubrids at this time. Oh, and I picked up a pair of velvet geckos, the Fimbria, Western Australian velvet geckos that are really beautiful. And I have a single male Strophurus ciliaris, the spiny-tailed gecko. I think that's it. I think that's the collection. I do have a couple odds and ends, like a big female coastal that's just kind of hanging out. Yeah, I think that sums it up.
It's pretty decent collection.
Great collection.
Yeah. I was going to go back on the inbreeding. So you brought up a point a bit about inbreeding, and I kind of want to, I kind of side with you on that one. I feel like everybody talks about inbreeding as a terrible thing, but so many people breed brothers and sisters like all the time, and people that don't even know it, like they'll go to a show or they'll buy a pair from you, a pair from him, and like we're all breeding brothers and sisters together all the time, everywhere, and 99% of the time there's no deleterious effects whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I'd actually be curious to see what the amount of, I don't know, like direct brother to sister pairing you would need to do before something actually deleterious would come out.
Right.
Because the majority of them, like, there's so many examples of no problems, but on the same effect, as soon as we have a problem, it's so easy to fix it,
Right.
right? Like, you take, I don't know, granite pop wins, right? That showed definitely some effects. You could outbreed it just one generation to a completely wild stock, and all the problems would be gone,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's just, to me, I feel like people put way too much emphasis on inbreeding as a really bad thing, when I feel like it really most of the time is not a problem. And I'm not gonna lie, like I've done some inbreeding in my collection as well to bring certain genes and to bring certain bloodlines out, or to increase the percentage of certain bloodlines, and I've had zero problems. And I think it's, if anything, that is something that we should do if you're looking to line breed or get certain phenotypes out there.
Right.
But anyway.
Well, and I think too, like, I mean, you look at laboratory rodents, right? They're a lot of those, they have, specific inbred lines where they've bred sibling to sibling, and the purpose of that is to get them as genetically close as they can. And I mean, they're as close to identical as you can get, other than, maybe identical twins, but like the genetics have been bottlenecked into, and they know the issues that pop up, or that there are more common because of those genetic bottlenecking events. But yeah, I mean, if you want to screw up your rodent colony, bring in rodents from a different colony and try to breed them into that colony. It can go downhill pretty quick. But um, I agree that I think we think of it in anthropomorphic terms, like, oh, that's icky. I would never breed a brother and sister together, because that's so taboo in our culture, and wrong in our culture. So, like, yeah, you don't want to have your snakes do that, because that's gross or whatever. But I think genetically, or unless there's a deleterious gene, and then usually if there is, then those, like you said, either cross it and breed it with diverse genetic lineages, or it will just disappear from the hobby. I mean, we had those that coastal line. I'm sure Eric will know. Eric Burke has all that knowledge in his head. He's pretty up on all the different lineages. I think it was like Sylvester lineage, and they just disappeared. You don't find those in the hobby anymore, because they had some sort of cancer associated or something like that, where they'd all get tumors and die at some point. So now there are no more Sylvester coastals out there because of that. So it's yeah, I think for the most part you're going to be okay, especially if there's no other choice. I mean, a lot of the different locality lines, that's we get like a pair, or and they came from probably the same parents that were wild collected or something. And now the original animals were probably not that closely related, but I think there's a lot of different species that kind of stay close to their where they were born, and or where they hatched or whatever, and they're breeding probably with animals that are related in some way to them. They're, unless they're traveling far and wide. Now there's some, natural mechanisms, like with the Egernia skinks, that are kind of colony. In a lot of cases, they have colonies of animals, and they'll boot out some of the offspring, and sometimes they'll let in others. But for the most part, they kind of keep it within their family system. So There's some outcrossing, but there's also some inbreeding that goes on in the wild too, that we've documented and understand to a certain situation. And just because you have sibling to sibling breeding doesn't mean they're, that's, especially if it's only a couple generations. I mean, how many captive bred generations do we have and with a lot of these lines? And how many do you need before you're going to start seeing issues, or issues are going to crop out? So it's hard to say. Again, data deficiency and herpetocultural dogma often are not in line with each other. We don't know what we don't know, but a lot of times we don't. The ignorance is somewhat willful because we're not trying to find out the answer. We're just kind of going with what's worked in the past, and we're not looking to see how we can answer some of these questions. There's always that debate on whether maternally incubated babies are stronger or healthier than their artificially incubated counterparts. And there's been some studies that have tried to tackle that question, but I don't know that their methods were necessarily the best. They were using for their artificial incubation. It was basically just a pit dug in the ground in Africa, and they were putting ball python eggs in this big pit, and they were all just kind of incubating under in this hole in the ground, and that was kind of their methods. Whereas they'd put a female, and it didn't seem like the maternal incubation was much better, so I don't know how, but I guess it worked to some extent. But it's hard to quantify or say, okay, this is an ideal method of maternal or artificial incubation. So I don't know. Lots of questions, not as many answers as we'd like, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to maybe switch the topic around a little bit. So you were talking about your diamonds. I'd love to know, do you want to elaborate on what type of diamonds you have, or maybe what lineage? Are they RPDs, or are they just all normals? I'm kind of always curious about that. And are they true diamond lineage, or are your diamonds dirty?
Well, I'll go back kind of in history a little bit when Ben and I were partners with Australian Addiction Reptiles. We got a pair of diamonds from Gulf Coast Reptiles, and after we got them, we found out, there's some question as to the purity of the diamonds, like, they have crosses in the mix or whatever, and they were and there was all this negative commenting about I think it was Gulf Coast Rep. Maybe I'm getting that wrong. It might have been a different business name, but I don't even know if they're a thing anymore. But anyway, there was all this question about the purity of their diamonds. Well, years later, Nick Mutton went back and traced their lineages and did all this digging and found out that no, they were pure diamonds, and they were just as pure as any other diamond lineages in the US. But somebody had considered them a competitor, and so they started to spread false information about their diamonds. Now for us, it was like, well, I don't know, do we want to so we ended up selling the pair because we didn't, there was that questionability of the purity of the diamonds, so we ended up selling the pair. So ever since then, I've always wanted to try diamonds again, and finally broke down and got some from Terry. Why is his last name failing me? Terry Burwell from, and so he's got some really nice lines of diamond pythons. I wrote it down the other day. I'm trying to remember what the lineage was, but they're like, the typical captive or the typical diamond lineages in the US. And so yeah, they're as pure as you can get, I guess, with confidence. And I don't believe they're from RPD backgrounds or anything like that, but the female has kind of a yellow stripe to some effect. And she has a lot of black in her pattern. She's kind of got a really nice, interesting look. And I think it was actually a holdback that Terry was willing to let go. So that was nice of him to sell her to me. And the male's more of kind of a black and white diamond, and really got a lot of like brightness to him. And so I'm curious to see what the offspring are going to look like. But so hopefully I'll get that chance this year. She'll lay some eggs here soon, and be able to check those out here soon. But
And how old is that pair?
I got them a few years back. I think they're around 5 years, maybe 6 years old. I think they were 2021s. Yeah, I think Lisa's right. They're Bushmaster. He got his from Bushmaster, and I can't remember if there was any information on where they came from. So, but yeah, they're really cool snakes. I'm having fun with them. The female's a little feisty. She's not very handleable. The one diamond I've seen in the wild was just like crawling through this cemetery in the middle of the day, and I walked over and picked it up. There was no aggression or defensiveness or anything like that, so it was pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know.
And no, that's cool. And how was the breeding trial? Like, did you just do the typical spring breeder? You just cooled them down, or did you keep them cohab the entire time? Or I'm just kind of curious as to how you did it.
Yeah. So I think I kept them separate after I got them for maybe a year or two, and then I got this fairly large setup for them, and put them in there after I'd had them for a year or so, and so I've been keeping them together year round for the last maybe 3 years. And so I guess I was a little bit surprised. I was not thinking how old they are or whatever. I was just kind of keeping them, trying to feed somewhat sparingly, trying to get them as cold as I could. I've got them in the coldest area in my reptile room, and they've been doing really well. And so, yeah, I was just kind of checking them out or taking pictures or cleaning their cage or something. I pulled them out of the cage and I was looking, I'm like, oh, that female looks kind of full down. And I realized, okay, she hasn't been eating for the last, couple of times I've offered food. She hasn't been interested. And I'm like, oh, she's gravid. That's why. So it's kind of a little bit of a surprise to me to some extent, where I wasn't necessarily thinking, oh, they're going to produce this year. So, and they're not overly huge. Like they're maybe in the 2 meter range, maybe a little bit smaller than that. So not very heavy bodied like you would think. Oh, mature diamond is big, large bodied. So I was kind of the thought process like, oh, they're probably not ready this year, but I guess they know when they're ready, and they were ready this year. So that's kind of how I went about it with the diamonds.
And just by curiosity, when do you plan on taking the male out? Or is he
He's
out
already
now?
out. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
I pulled him a couple weeks ago after she had her prelay shed. I pulled him out. So after I kind of saw that she was gravid, I got a cage ready for him.
I was just wondering, because I wonder if some people would actually keep them together even until she lays. It'd be just
Yeah. I've done that before too, where the male is in the cage, and I don't think it would hurt too much. I just didn't want to have any outside factors that might, because I guess one of the things that I was seeing was that he was either in the same nest box, or he was in the nest box that but she was kind of outside of the nest box in a less great area of the cage. And so that was kind of, I was thinking, oh, he's kind of competing for these places and pushing her out, or making her feel uncomfortable for whatever. That was the reason I kind of pulled him from the cage, was because of that. So I don't know if that has any bearing on reality or if that was the case, but I just want to make sure, because this will be a new species for me if I get the eggs and offspring from those. So I didn't want to chance it, I guess. So,
I wish it for you, man. I'm
yeah,
pretty damn
thank you.
jealous. I still have there's two species I've been trying really hard, and it's the diamonds and the roughies, and
Mhm.
I just can't get them to go. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Just not
Yeah.
working.
I'll get those
So,
roughies colder. I hear you talking about them like they're, a tropical python, but it gets down close to freezing in the Kimberley during the
you
winter time. So
you think I should get them colder?
yeah,
How cold is cold for you?
I would say like high 50s, low 60s, probably.
Okay, I definitely did not treat them like that.
Yeah. I mean, it gets down to it gets down close to freezing, like, down close to zero, maybe in the single digits in the Kimberley, at least at nighttime. I'm not saying keep them at 60. I'm saying the nighttime drop gets to the high 50s.
So
And
I went down to 64 ish.
mhm,
So
yeah.
I mean, I could go colder, but I'm not gonna lie. I keep them on the top cages because in my head they need to be warmer.
Right, right. I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of times we think about those areas, those locations, and think, okay, I need to keep them, hot all the time or whatever. And I mean, I've heard people have found them out in the teens, like 15 degrees Celsius at night, and they find one out, hunting. So I'm not sure what 15 was, that like high 60s probably, where they're out hunting at those temperatures. So, and I think I had that experience. I was in North Queensland, around Cairns area, up in the Atherton Tablelands, and we were out herping, and it was rainy and kind of cold, like 25 degrees, 75 degrees, Fahrenheit, 25 degrees or lower Celsius. And I was thinking, oh, we're not going to find anything. It's too cold out here. I get out of the vehicle and I'm kind of like a little chilly. And as soon as I said that, I said, we probably are not going to find much. It's a little cold tonight. We turn the corner and there's a jungle carpet python in the middle of the road out, moving around. So, I had to eat my words pretty quick, but I think that kind of opened my eyes up to like, oh, they're not active at 90 degrees. They're not, they're estivating, or they're hiding out at 90 degrees, or they're going in under the canopy where it's 75 degrees or somewhere around there, like room temperature. They don't like it when it's hot out. They tolerate it, and because they have no choice, they're in the environment, but they also seek places where it's much cooler, I'm sure, during those high heat times. Now, do they need some heat at some times? Of course, of course they do. And I give my rough scaled pythons a 90 degree basking area where they can heat up to that if they want, but they can also get down to the low 80s during the day if they want, and then at night it gets down into the 70s most time, and then down into the high 50s for a lot of the year. So that, at least that's kind of been my attitude with it, is giving them choices. Now, I'm not saying that all reptiles are going to make the best choices when they're given, the options. I know I was talking to Terry Phillip, and he was talking about some boas that he was keeping in captivity at the reptile gardens and trying to reproduce them, and they weren't having much success. So they actually went and observed them in the wild, and they were like, man, they were like really cold during part of the year, and giving them the option to be warmer during the year, during the breeding season, they actually messed up their own reproductive, messed up the litters because they were getting too hot and cooking the litters. So just because, I guess it's, it's like if you keep a tropical snake, but you know, all of a sudden the temperature drops down to freezing, they're going to probably sit out and freeze to death because they don't know what to do with those kind of temperatures. And so they haven't evolved to figure out, you know, okay, when it's cold, I seek shelter where it's warmer, you know, or they don't have the physiological mechanisms to cope with that colder temperature, and so they'll die. Same with the opposite end. If they're not used to having those high temperatures during the reproductive season, they may choose to go bask at a higher temperature than is good for the offspring because they don't have that option in the wild. At least that's kind of my thoughts around that. And, you know, through talking to smarter people than me, you know, coming to those conclusions, like just because, you know, they might be able to do better if you give them a wide range of choices. Sometimes they make dumb decisions anyway, or at least dumb decisions in our minds, you know, cooking their clutch and things, where it might just be a feature of they don't have an alternative choice.
Yeah. You're currently working on a book, am I correct?
Yeah, we're
Which book are you currently working? Is it the Blackheaded?
yeah, we're trying to put the finishing touches on that. It should be done. I think Lucas is just doing the photo layout, but I think everything's pretty much written.
Do you mind if I ask what part you're in charge of, or what you've been writing?
I would. So it was a little tricky because it was. I mean, it's two species, so it's not a ton of work there. And I've kind of taken a little bit of a back seat where I figured. So Nick and I had kind of planned to tackle the Aspidites genus, and then found out that Lucas was also interested in writing a black-headed python book. So I said, well, instead of writing two different books, like let's join forces. And so it's become kind of a four author book because Lucas had Zach Loafman as his major professor, and so that was part of his master's degree was and so that kind of evolved from that project, I guess. And so a lot of it was written, but I took the natural history chapters. That's kind of where I like to write, or in the natural history chapters. And so I joined up with Lucas and kind of edited or added to his what he already had. So just putting in other, you know, publications or summaries from other publications or things that I knew about the different species into those natural history. Now I also did the same thing with the captive husbandry and evolutionary history and things like that, where more from a adding unto rather than writing it from scratch myself. So that's kind of the role that I've played in this book, is just, I guess, adding to it and hopefully making it a better book from with my additions. But Lucas is the main writer for the book, so we'll give him credit where credit's due.
I'm sure all four of you guys have a part in there, so I'm looking forward to it, actually, to read it. Just by curiosity, do you have like one or two nuggets you want to give about the book that you think are pretty cool things that most people would not know, or something that you've learned while doing that?
Yeah, the biggest thing that kind of opened my eyes was the idea of microclimates. Like we think about womas as desert pythons, like they're out in the middle of the desert in the sandy areas, and that they're probably, you know, hot temperatures with very, very low humidity all the time. But there was a data set that we actually got from a researcher that was conducting research on womas in the wild, and they had measured the relative humidity, temperatures, other things like that within their environment. And the womas are like in a 90% humid environment the majority of the time. Like at least 70% of the time, they're sitting around 90% humidity. And of course, that's variable, you know, throughout the year, throughout the different seasons. But they're sitting in burrows I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You think about a lot of desert animals, like, I mean, Gila monsters. You see Gila monsters in a zoo, and a lot of times they're, got a bright basking lamp, and they're sitting out, and they look miserable. They have like stuck shed or whatever. Like they're not keeping that. They're assuming, oh, this is a desert animal. I'm going to keep it in this desert environment. Whereas Gila monsters are underground probably 95% of their lives, so they're not out on the surface in those hot, dry temperatures. They're underground, maintaining their moisture levels, and they'll come out at night, or they'll come out for brief periods of time, enough to hunt and get some food or go mate or something. And then for the most of the year, they're sitting under a big giant boulder at probably 90% humidity, that kind of thing. So once we understand that natural history and we adapt our keeping methods a little bit, then we can, I think, improve our success. And so that's kind of what I tried to take in with the womas. After learning that, I changed up their cages to have tried to mimic a burrow, and I think I could probably do it much simpler. I tried to do it a little more complicated, which made it difficult to check on them properly. So I probably do some adjustments there. But yeah, this I think giving them that humid hide area, or like mimicking a burrow system, is probably very beneficial to their well-being. So, of course, that's trying to replicate the wild in a box is difficult for sure, and so it's hard to get the right settings there. But that's kind of what I was my big takeaway from writing the book, was learning about that, and thinking about that a little bit more, trying to figure out how to replicate that in a captive environment.
So, how cold do you get them when you go to breed them?
So for the most part, like, everything's kind of handled the same in my room, where it gets down into the high 50s, maybe even closer to the low 50s during the winter, the peak drop during the night. And then during the day, they have a hot spot, and it gets up, into, they can bask and warm up and stuff during the day, but at night it gets fairly cold. So that's kind of, everything's treated the same, with maybe some variation on how high or low they are in the room. Like the diamonds I keep on the bottom of the stack, maybe the Brettles and the inlands I'll keep on the bottom of the stack, and the jungles and the Darwins or something go up on the top. So just depends on where they're positioned. But yeah.
Gotcha. I'm just asking that question because I have a pair.
Mm-hmm.
I've bred them successfully 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
But so when Dom met me, I was like, I had them in a tote with a heat pad on one side
Mm-hmm.
and a heat lamp, and it get pretty cold. But anyway, I had great success that way, and now I've inc- integrated them into my room. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
and now put them into a PVC enclosure. Blah blah blah.
Right.
I've had success one time since that, but now I've kept them together. I've tried to. I don't. Maybe I've changed things too much. Maybe my pair is too old. Like my pair is a
Mm-hmm.
2009.
Right.
How long do they? I've seen them. She gets really big. I see him kind of like locking up with her, but she just won't ovulate. So I
Right.
don't know if it's me not getting them cold enough. Maybe I should try to go a little colder. I feel like maybe when I had them in the tote, they were getting a little colder than they are in this room.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm babying them, like you guys say. Like the way, like you're right. You totally, everything you're saying is true. We don't treat them. We think that that animal deserves to be under a heat lamp all the time, right? And it's like,
Right.
really, it's not.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they might be, several, meters down in a burrow underneath the ground, and they're at 70 degrees and, 90% humidity or something. But I don't think they should be kept. again, I think it goes back to choices to some extent, but I think you might be more on the nose there. At least I would lean towards the fact that they're older and maybe they're slowing down in their reproductive life. Pythons and most reptiles can breed throughout their whole lives. And, there's been some instances where 30-year-old, 40-year-old female pythons have produced clutches of eggs, but that's definitely not the norm. And they definitely slow down. Like Dom was saying, their first clutch might be their best clutch, or, or could potentially be the best clutch. And they go downhill after that, or maybe have an increase with second and third, fourth clutches, but then after that they kind of go downhill and you start seeing fewer eggs or no eggs at all. I mean, I've had some older pairs that just stopped, and again, going back to what Ryan Young was talking about with the hard reset, maybe giving them like a 6-month fast or something like that might kick them into like resetting and starting that reproductive cycling again, and they might improve down the road. You might get some more eggs out of them in the future. It's really kind of hard to say.
Yeah, no, I get it. I feel maybe I wasn't giving them enough food the last few years. Some people say food, like I've heard Lucas Lee say a few times, I really pumped them up with a lot of food.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that this year, and I really thought she was going to go, and then all of a sudden, nothing. Like,
yeah, and I'm having the same frustration with a pair of one pair of my Womas where I keep thinking she's gravid and I keep waiting for eggs and then she never lays, and I'm thinking, they should be going and they just don't do it. So I don't know. I did get eggs from my another pair that's fairly old, but I just missed them. So yeah, it's my own fault there, but. I think that going back to what I was saying about having them set up the way I did, it was a little bit complicated to check on them regularly. And so that's why I think I missed the clutches, because, it was a little harder to get into the nest box and see, because it was kind of this convoluted system of tunnels and, and so there were areas where I couldn't check as easily. And so I missed the clutch because of that. And she didn't wrap it or hang around with it. So my own fault. So I need to simplify it a little bit, but I think it was a okay try, but I just need to do better. My own fault.
Yeah. I was thinking of maybe getting another female, like a little younger, but of age, to see if that might, I don't know, if the male would try her and maybe produce eggs and see if it's her that's the issue, or if it's him, or if it's both of them. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I just want to do it one more time. 2009, the pair. So originally they are from Don Patterson. And then they were sold to Fusion Exotic. I bought them in 2009. And yeah, I just, the guy, he had never bred them, and I'm surprised, because they were this company was all about, or breeding them once and then selling them off and selling all the babies off, right? Just always profit, right?
So but you bought them in 2009, right?
No.
Okay.
I bought. They're 2009 babies.
Okay.
Or adults.
That's still pretty old. Like it's getting up there. Like that's a 17-year-old animal. Like, and I believe they're still capable. But that's right. And how many clutches have you had with them?
4. Like we've had 4, and I bought them back in 2011 or 12, because in 2014 I was successful with them. So
yeah, that sounds probably just like they're getting on the old side and slowing down. I mean, there might be something you can do to kick them back into it, but maybe getting a younger pair might be the easiest way forward. So it's hard.
The reason is because Dom wants a female so bad, and I only produce males, so I just try my best every year.
I've been waiting forever for him to produce a female. And all the clutches, it's all been males, only males.
Really? You've jinxed me now.
So it's interesting too. Sometimes you just get those pairs that just churn out, one sex or the other, and it can be a struggle sometimes. Yeah. I'm not sure why that is. I've heard that with a few different things where I had the same thing with some locality Stimsons from Ryan Young. I got a male from him and was hoping to get a female, but his pair only produced males, it seemed. So I never did get that female. Yeah.
Just a thought, Shan, but I could give you her son male that I got multiple years back from you, and you could try to breed her son back to her instead of the original male. Not sure if that would make a difference, but it's a younger male.
So you think it's the female that's got the problem or the male that has the problem? I have no idea.
Honestly, I think it's more the female the problem, but it's a different attempt. Like chances are the male is most likely good and probably more a
I'm
female problem, but
I
who
am
knows?
no expert at that. I see him locking up, so he's trying. So it's not like he's not interested.
So, Justin, what's your thought on that? Do you think
Yeah.
as snakes age, males tend to be good longer, or does it tend to be more females, or am I just thinking of more of humans here, where a man can still reproduce at 70, not really a female?
No, I think that's, kind of one of those universal things where, aside from a few instances, I'm sure there's no set firm rules, but usually males can reproduce a lot longer than females. It's a lot harder on a female to reproduce than it is on a male. We have it the easy part, I think, but so I think it's the same, for any sexually reproductive species, that the males are typically almost expendable to some extent, where the females are the important, difficult, side of things, whereas the males, they can kind of come and go and have it easy. Yeah.
Well, maybe lending you my mail would be not very useful then.
I mean, again, it could be, that new factor, new stimulus or whatever that kicks things into gear. It's hard to say, but I think Dom's probably right. It might not improve, but you never know. It's worth a try. Definitely could still reproduce, and it's hard to say what makes them stop wanting to reproduce or having the ability to reproduce, but and some females, like Lisa's saying, can keep going. She said she saw
14.
a post from Vladimir with 14 clutches for a woman, a female, I'm assuming green tree python. But yeah, 14 clutches, that's pretty impressive for a small green tree python. And I've had pretty good success with at least 8 to 10 years of reproduction from a pair of children's pythons and things like that, where they can go for quite a while and lay many clutches before they either stop or just kind of peter out or whatever. So yeah.
So, kind of a weird question that I don't think applies, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Women and humans tend to go through menopause and eventually fall out of that. Is there an equivalent with snakes where the female would go through a stage where she would no longer reproduce because of it, or is it just they run out of follicles, or like I'm just curious to see if there is kind of like that line in the sand where it's like, no, you're done.
For pythons, I don't believe that's the case. I think pythons can reproduce until the day they die, as far as I know. At least that was somewhat indicated by I think the oldest female has been like 40 or 36 years, something like that, where I think it was a ball python in a zoo and had eggs at a long many decades after. And I don't know how often that female reproduced, but I think there have been some records where females have reproduced every year until the year they die or whatever, 30 years later or something. So I don't think that's common, but I don't know that there's a hardwired kind of menopause thing with pythons. I don't believe there is, but I could be wrong.
All right, I'm just curious. Just my mind goes in the weirdest places sometimes. So I, there to me, if there's an actual stop in humans, maybe there is in pythons, and like you're saying, I don't think there is, but you very seldomly hear of anybody breeding a python past the age of, let's say, even 20, right?
Right.
It happens, but it's extremely rare. But to me, in my head, that's like saying a human having a child and a female having a child in their mid 50s, right? It happens. It's extremely rare, though,
Mm-hmm.
but it
Yeah.
can happen. So
Yeah, but I don't know that there's any biological reason for that, as far other
Yeah.
than just like it gets hard on the female and it's harder to let just reproductive success goes down with age, regardless of what it is, it seems. But again, I don't know of any hard fast rule that says they stop after a certain age. Yeah. That's a good question, though.
Yeah,
And who knows? It's probably data deficient, like every other question in
fair enough.
herpetology. But maybe Rick Shine. I know Rick Shine did a lot of research in that. I mean, he followed water pythons. His group, followed water pythons for decades. So that might be the best source of information for, longevity of reproductive in female pythons. But I don't know. I mean, you've got a lot of factors in there. How often are you finding the same females year after year after year, and predation and things like that. I think in the wild, females just don't live as long as they do in captivity for the most part. Like they get eaten by something or have some sort of natural issue happen, like weather or so yeah, it's hard to say. I think they have a pretty easy life in captivity.
Yeah, Lisa just said it there. 62-year-old ball python from the St. Louis Zoo laid a parthenogenesis clutch. I think she might be right. It was some type of story like that.
Right. Yeah, nature finds a way. And that may be because that female was never bred. And so like finally it's like, well, last ditch effort, let's go with parthenogenesis. So it's really again, probably doesn't happen very often in the wild, or doesn't need to happen very often in the wild. But I could see a scenario like, female gets stranded on an island and is the only individual on the island, and maybe parthenogenesis kicks in, and all of a sudden there's a population on that island. I'm sure there's plenty of islands that had that scenario where the female just lived her life in solitude and died, and there were no population there. But like I think there's been there's a number of species that use parthenogenesis just for that case, like the mourning geckos or whatever, where they can get on a ship and end up in some area of the world, and then all of a sudden there's a population of that gecko there because they were able to utilize that parthenogenesis. And yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon for sure.
With pythons, though, pythons are XXYs, right? Am I wrong to think that?
Z, are they XY? Maybe they're ZW. I can't remember. Yeah, that's
okay. Whichever one they are.
Yeah.
If they have parthenogenesis, aren't they always all females? With pythons?
Yeah, usually. Yeah. Well, I believe so, but I'm not completely sure. I think there's mechanisms for where that could change, but I don't know for sure.
Isn't that I think androgenesis, or am I saying it wrong?
Right. Well, there's different mechanisms of that.
So anyway, I'll lead to my question, because when an animal has parthenogenesis just to produce only all females, I don't really understand the purpose of it. Mm-hmm. Right? Because in my head, it's more like where a lone female gets stranded, there is no male, there's nothing. So her reproducing multiple females, how is that going to help her reproduce more offspring in the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's obviously a good question. So that's what I'm wondering, if that's
if I've got it wrong,
if it's kicking the can down the road in the anticipation that maybe a male will get stranded on the island and eventually sexual reproduction will reoccur, or if like with the geckos, they're all just female populations, so the females just make more females, and that just goes on in perpetuity. So but for a python, I don't know that there's no examples of parthenogenic python populations. So obviously sexual reproduction is going to be the staple there, and the one-off or the exception of the rule is once in a while they'll have parthenogenic clutches just to pass on their genes in some way, in the hopes of maybe like, okay, a male will come down the road again in the future. I don't know. It's a good question.
Oh well.
Yeah. Just my thoughts on the issue, but yeah.
Justin, is there anything you'd like to discuss or anything you'd like to talk before we start winding down? I don't know if you want to go down the herping route, if you want to go down your collection of how many rattlesnakes you found, or if there's any other topics you'd like to go down. We're probably like wearing down to our last 15 minutes.
Sure. I mean, obviously, if we start talking about herping, I could go on for another couple hours. That's one of my favorite topics, especially these days. I think that's kind of I don't know, at least for me, it's been the natural progression. Like I wanted to keep all these things in boxes, and then now I just kind of want to see them in the wild, and keeping them in boxes facilitates my seeing them in the wild. But I don't know. I look forward to any and all herping, but as far as the rattlesnake competition goes, Rob is firmly in the lead. He's one away from completing the set in the U.S. Of all Crotalus forms, as we've kind of agreed upon with the group that are in the competition. So I think I'm 4 or 5 away from completing the set. So I think there's 27, so he's at 26, and I'm around 21, 22, somewhere around there. I've got a couple easy ones that I'm hoping to knock out on a couple trips, but I could find one in a couple weeks here where I'm going down to IHS down in Arizona, and I need to find the sidewinder form down there, the subspecies of sidewinder that occurs in Arizona. I found the Utah one and the one in California, and I just need that Arizona one now. So, and then the other easy one is the Southern Pacific rattlesnake. I don't know how I haven't seen one of those yet. That one's kind of a weird, frustrating one for me. So, I should be able to knock out 2 pretty quickly and easily within the year. And then the others are the most difficult one. I'm hoping to maybe have a look for in down with IHS, and maybe later on in the year as well, do another trip down there, because that's going to be the biggest challenge. And so I might be able to catch up to Rob in the time it takes to find this other form, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm looking forward to different trips coming up. But I don't know. I need to get back to Australia again. That's a big one in my mind. I want to get back over there, and hoping to hit the Kimberley in 2027. That's the plan anyway. We'll see how things go if we get another pandemic or something that keeps us out of Australia. But that's kind of my plan, to make it up there and try to find a roughie in the wild.
Have you guys decided if you're going to drive there, or if you're going to try to use a chopper?
I don't think the chopper is an option as far as I know. Like I kind of looked into it half-heartedly, but I do want to kind of have the flexibility of having a vehicle to going to different spots. If one's not working out, or the weather pattern's not looking great, we can go somewhere else and hopefully have better success. But I mean, it's tricky, to plan a trip out a year in advance, and hoping to get lucky on all the different aspects of the trip. I think the last big trip to Australia was the 50th birthday celebration in Central Australia. And, obviously Brettles pythons were kind of the big target there. And we spent a good solid week looking for those. And as soon as we arrived in Australia, I was like, oh man, I've screwed this up. It's way too hot, unseasonably hot, and we're not going to find anything. And I'm worried, I was the one who planned the trip, and now everybody who went over there with me is going to be bummed out because we don't find anything, but we ended up having a really good trip and found, all 4 python species that we could have found. And I mean, seeing that wild Brettles python was a pretty big dream of mine that I've had for quite a while since I went in 2010. So, 15 years later, was able to have that dream realized. But yeah, just seeing these things that I keep in boxes in the wild is giving me a better appreciation for them, makes me want to do better with the ones that I have in captivity, makes me appreciate them a lot more than I, do when I've just see them in a deli cup or in a cage or whatever. So it's, I don't know. I'd challenge anybody who's into reptiles, get out and find the species you like in the wild and see how they're doing their thing. It's really not too expensive. I mean, it's probably the price of a high-end pair of pythons to get over and see them in the wild. So instead of getting that next big purchase, just use that to buy a plane ticket and go out and, do your best to find them in the wild. As far as things, Australian pythons I need to see in the wild, I've got a couple difficult ones like the rough scale python. I've heard they're not too hard to find, but just getting there is the challenge. And then Owen Pelly pythons, which are a pretty big challenge as well. Still need to see an inland carpet, a Barron's olive, and the Flinders Gammons form of inland carpet. That's another big Jordan, my buddy Jordan Parrott was fortunate enough to see the cover animal from the second edition of the Carpet Python book. And I mean, if you haven't heard Jordan on a podcast, he's very entertaining to listen to. Does a great interview, and one of the best herpers out there. He's like, my idol at this point. So he's a great guy. So, but yeah, that's, I've still got, 4 or 5 different pythons I need to see in Australia in the wild. The New Guinea spotted, or whatever you want to call it, they also occur in Australia. So they're not specific to New Guinea. And then the southern spotted, I haven't seen either. I've just seen the Cape York form of the spotted python. So a couple more I need to see, but, looking forward to taking that challenge on. I don't know if I'll find all the Crotalus forms first or all the Australian python forms first. We'll see.
But, go for Australia. You're already in the States. It's easier for you to get around there.
Right. Yeah.
So if I can go back to one thing you've said earlier, and because you brought up Brettles, you were talking about your controversial whether the normal form should be the hypo and the melanistic, right? And I realize you were saying it somewhat as a joke, but I kind of want to hear your thought, I guess your opinion on what my thinking is. But as a general rule, whenever we have a mutation in snakes, it tends to be the same method of replication in other snakes, right? Like if albino is recessive in carpet pythons, it's recessive in, I don't know, ball pythons or in Burmese pythons, etc.
Yeah.
The same way that if exanthic is incomplete dominant in this species, it tends to be incomplete dominant in most, if not all, other species, right? You kind of agree. So
yeah,
when it comes to hypo tends to be an incomplete dominant form, right? And I can see your smile, so you know where I'm going with this, right?
Right.
So hypo is an incomplete dominant in many other species of reptiles, and we're talking about snakes or even leaving it in pythons. So in Brettles pythons, why is it that a hypo is a polygenic trait, which in itself already there tells me that it's not hypo. It should be something else, right?
Right.
And are you kind of on the same page as me when I'm saying this, or is it just maybe the terminology is wrong?
It's such a difficult thing to answer because unless you have genetic testing or the identifying the genes responsible for hypomelanism is, I guess, while we call them hypo Brettles or hypomelanistic Brettles pythons, I wonder if that's off too, because you look at all the most of the wild specimens that are found look as good or better than our best hypos in captivity. You know, they're brighter. The one we found was it was incredibly beautiful, very light red. I mean, it would have been the best hypo in my collection, you know, that kind of thing. So I wonder too if, you know, there's some debate on whether or not the coloring in Brettles is environmentally influenced as well. You know, a lot of people have suggested UV may play a role, heat, hunger. I've heard a lot of different things that could factor into how light a Brettles carpet python is. We do see, you know, we tend to see a lot darker ones in our captive populations, especially in the U.S. captive population. They had the line from Europe that was lighter colored, but I wonder if that's just the normal wild type, is that light coloration. And I mean, you do have instances of populations that are axanthic or hypomelanistic or something like that, where the default is the morph or whatever, you know, whatever you want to say. So I don't know. I've kind of had a hard time with that. I've kind of gone the rounds with Nick a little bit in regards to some of the hypo mutations out there, whether or not they're just polygenic traits, and some tend to be lighter than others. I mean, that's all hypomelanism is just a lighter color form compared to the normal, whereas in the wild, the normal is probably lighter in average color than our captives are. So we're basing the hypomelanistic name on a comparison with what's been traditionally produced in captivity. You know, we want to, and I've seen some very beautiful and nice red Lazic line, or, you know, Brettles pythons in captivity, but a lot of them are darker. And I have a female that's very dark, you know, that from that line. And so I don't know if that's just a factor of being in captivity, or, you know, or if it was just the individuals that were, that started those lines that were just darker. You know, it's hard to say in retrospect what the case was, but I just see some of these wild animals that are incredibly light and beautiful, and I don't see a lot of dark ones that are being found in the wild. So that leads me to believe that we're probably off in our thinking and labeling of something as hypomelanistic versus what's been traditionally bred in captivity. That that's kind of how I see it. And so I I I know that you know, there's some things like albinism where a single gene and broken gene, I guess, will cause there to be no melanin, and so you have an amelanistic or albino animal. Whereas with other things, it's less easy um, to say this is due to one gene or multiple genes, unless you can identify the gene. And then I mean, I guess in science, that's kind of the way it goes. Like if you say, okay, this gene does this, well, you have to isolate that gene and then you know, genetically modify an animal to have the gene that didn't used to have the gene, or didn't have a background of that gene, and show that the change occurs with that single change, right? If you can't do that, then you can't conclusively say, oh, it's this or that. And, you know, breeding trials, yeah, you can breed it to an animal that looks different, and, oh, it showed lighter color or whatever when I bred it to that. Well, yeah, you're still not demonstrating that it's due to one gene or multiple genes or whatever. You know, oh, there was a range of color and lightness. Well, again, is that just the variation in the single gene, or is that multiple genes at play? It's difficult to say just by breeding trials or by visual, you know, phenotype, how a gene is in play, except for those simple recessive traits like albinism or axanthic or whatever. You know, even those can be, or at least like the axanthic traits, where it's just differences in color or darkness or whatever. If it's completely devoid of a color, then you know, obviously, okay, that the gene for that color is broken. But where it's just a little lighter, and some of the babies are lighter and some are not so light, and so you're like, oh, must be, you know, multi genes involved. Well, yeah, that's a good guess, or that's a good hypothesis, but until you have genetic analysis, and you can pinpoint the gene and demonstrate that the presence or absence of that gene corresponds with the phenotype, it's really difficult to make a conclusive statement of this is absolutely, polygenic or a single gene or whatever. So I don't know. I just see wild Brettles looking, so light and nice, and I'm like, I think it's a misnomer to call, things in captivity hypomelanistic when that's the default form, is that lighter color, and that's just normal. Like again, hypomelanism, you're just comparing it to a darker state, and that's maybe artificially something in captivity due to either line breeding, limited genetics where the founder animals might have been darker, or who knows what. So
it's almost too late to fix it now, though. It's many of the things that we've been saying forever now. Nobody wants to change it, right? It's
I mean, codominant is a great term.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Example of that, yeah.
And I will not use the word codominant, but you still hear it all the time. And I feel like there's been a big push to try to get rid of that stupid word, and yet it's still everywhere, right? It's so
right.
Shan, you got a last question for Justin before we slowly close it off?
Maybe a little bit about children's pythons, because I'm getting 2 pairs in a few days from now. So, sexual reproduction age around 3, 4.
I mean, males could definitely go sooner. Females probably 2 to 3 years. Yeah, is typical. Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah,
They're
pretty straightforward. I mean, most of the Antaresia are easy to breed, and they breed at relatively small sizes for a python for sure.
If you compared the children to the spotted, anything differently you'd do, or
pretty similar? I keep them the same, breed them the same. Just kind of try them. Gotcha. When you think they're the mature size or whatever. And we've published the size that mature, and you can find it in different publications. Rick Shine went and did a lot of digging into museum specimens, and he could find like females that had maturing ovum and things like that to say, okay, when they're this size, they're mature. And so, same with the males. Okay, they can produce sperm at this age or this size. And so, I think age definitely plays a role, but size is also a factor in that too. So, the Antaresia can reproduce at pretty small sizes, sometimes surprisingly small sizes. But
I don't like the idea of saying a size for a snake can reproduce, because again, you could have a snake that is insanely tiny, but if it's 8 years old and that small, chances are it can reproduce even very, very small.
Right.
Like I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like a really tiny snake that's old can probably reproduce.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's for sure. But the hard thing is you can't tell how old a wild snake is. So all you have to go on is size. And so even a tiny, old snake that's reproductively, it still meets that size requirement, if that makes sense. I think the opposite is true, where it's difficult to say just because it's a certain size it can reproduce. I think age is a factor, but for Antaresia, if you can get them to that mature size, they're typically old enough to reproduce, at least in my experience. I mean, you could probably pump them, feed them daily or something. And I don't know, a children's python might try to take a daily meal. They're pretty ravenous and they love to eat. So, but yeah, they might not, that might not go so well. I don't know that I recommend that, but
I won't do that. But I feel the whole species of Antaresia, I feel, just love to eat.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Even the babies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been pumping the pygmies. They're 2023s, but I've been going really slow. But this year I've been giving them a lot more food, and they are growing like crazy.
Right.
They're almost full size, Dom, actually. So believe it or not, You won't even believe it the next time you see them.
Those are
Um,
holdbacks from, you said 2023.
yeah, the
Oh,
first
yeah.
time that we were produced the pygmies, we
What do you have? Do you have two females?
um, so we thought anyway. Yeah, we'll have to check. We'll have to check those
We'll
again.
have to recheck again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've
Um,
I've always wondered if you could even feed a baby, a juvenile too much. I mean, obviously you can, but without breaking the bank,
I
if you
don't think
just,
so.
yeah, they grow long and thin pretty rapidly, as long as you're supporting that growth. But as soon as they hit mature size, I definitely think they can be overfed and,
I think
you
if
know,
yeah, if we talk about like power feeding or
mhm.
whatever you want to call it, I
Right,
feel
right.
like you no, but even then, like I feel like if an animal's definitely under a year, I feel like you could not feed an animal too much.
Yeah.
As long as it
Within
wants to
reason, right?
eat, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
even then, let's say you fed a snake every 4 days, a python.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying to do it, but do you
so
actually
bad.
think it would damage the baby? I actually feel like it wouldn't.
No,
Like think
probably
of
not.
ball pythons. Like they're getting ball pythons sexually mature. I think I've as early as a female at 9 months. I think I've heard, which
Mm.
is like pure ridiculousness. But the only way to do that is you would have to feed it at a schedule that is insane, like in like
Right.
every few days, and the animal is, I bet you, is still fine, but
Does it
when
have
it
long term effects though? That's the
it
thing,
probably does.
That's the
right?
I
question.
Come on,
100%,
seriously,
100%.
right?
Mhm.
I'm not saying to do it, and I would never do it if, but
No,
yeah. Justin, if we can just real quickly, one more. When it comes to children's, do you understand the morphs really well that are in children's? And the reason I'm asking that is I think Shans are coming in as ghosts, and
Mhm.
a ghost appears to not be the ghost that is in other
No, no,
species.
yeah.
So, what the
right.
heck is a ghost children python?
That's I've had a hard time and like with that name, but I guess it's more of a descriptor, like, and I think children's pythons just naturally kind of go through a color changing, pattern changing events, night to day kind of thing, like you'll see with other pythons, like Owen Pelly pythons. They get really light during night. Rough scale pythons will lighten up during the night and darken up during the day, those kind of things. So sometimes you'll pull out your children's python, it will just be absolutely glowing. It'll have a beautiful pattern, beautiful colors, and then you get it out in the day and it's just kind of a brown, dull brown color. So I think that's kind of the idea. These ghosts like fire up and look really crazy beautiful at certain times of the night or whatever. But I haven't really seen it as a consistent, like, okay, it just looks like this all the time, that's a ghost. It's like, so I don't know. Ghost is probably not a great term, and we probably shouldn't have included it in the book or promoted that idea. The other thing with children's pythons is, when I got my original pair from the Barkers back in like the year 2000, I think they were 1998 animals. They produced babies that were really light red, light, kind of a pink coloration when they hatched, and other lines in the US would produce babies that were much darker. And so as I sold some of these babies and they started to be more prevalent in herpetoculture, people were like, "Oh, these are hypos or albinos or what, T positive albinos or whatever." And so I think people tend to run with those things before they really think or prove them out or ask around even, because like if people would have asked me, oh, what's the, because I sold one to a friend and he had another one, a darker one, and they bred together and like half the babies were light and half the babies were dark. And he's like, oh, this must be something, this must be a mutation or this must be something. I said, no, it's just variability. You've got a light animal, a dark animal, and half the babies look like the mom, half the babies look like the dad. It's not like it's anything too exciting. And I think there's been examples of that where people in the US have said, oh, we have this T positive albino children's python, where it's just a normal children's python, from the light line or whatever. I think the Barkers called it the red desert line or something. So, those trade names or labels that we've sometimes put on snakes and called them different, names, don't necessarily have anything to do with their genetics or some kind of morph. And sometimes people want to with the more craziness of our modern herpetoculture, they just want to push it as something unique or special so they can sell it, so they can get more money for it, versus, if it's just, like what I'm saying, just a natural variation or a specific line or feature of a certain line, then they don't get as much money, so there's not as much hype. So I think you got to beware of the car salesman mentality in snake sales, because they're going to try to bring something out of where there really isn't anything. And unfortunately, people fall for that, or succumb to that, or get excited about that, and they get basically swindled. They still have a nice animal. They might have paid a little bit more than they would have otherwise, but for the most part, it's kind of a dishonest representation of what's going on in reality. So
I think
that's
so many people do it. It's all about
right.
marketing, right?
Right.
So I'm going to go back just real quickly. So if you had to describe a ghost children python, you would describe it just as a slightly lighter form than the normal counterpart. Would that
Yeah,
be
that's
a
probably,
fair?
the best way you could describe it. It's
And
not any
how
kind of specific mutation or
okay.
reliable
and
phenotype.
and how do you tell them apart when they're born? I'm just curious. So let's say I have a
Yeah.
clutch, and I have 8 dark babies and 3 of them that are slightly lighter, and I would call them those ghosts.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know that you could. And I
no,
would think, like, with the, I mean, a true ghost would be like an axanthic albino, right? That's a true ghost, or what you would call like a carpet python. If you had a ghost, it would be an axanthic albino, right? I think
No,
that's,
no,
it
doesn't that
would
what make
be
a
a
ghost?
caramel or a
no.
hypoxanthic.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I think you're.
Caramel
Yeah,
axanthic. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
think you were
Yeah.
going down the
Snow,
moons and snow.
The
snow.
There you go.
snow.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't keep up with the morphs too much. If you can't
it's.
tell, Nick was the one who wrote that section in the
No
in the
worries.
complete carpets.
I'm just trying to figure out. So, do you have any idea of the method of replication or the mode of transmission for the ghost and children eye?
I think it's just a polygenic, just
Just
a,
polygenic. Okay.
yeah. And again, I don't even know if ghost should be a real term for
Well, it
children's. It's
shouldn't.
more of a marketing line rather than
That's.
a mutation or something
I've
specific.
gone in
Unless
that.
somebody's come up with something or found something that I don't know
So,
of.
so T positive though is a thing, though, right?
Yes, there are some T positive albinos. I was able to see some in Europe or in Australia back in 2011. My buddy Peter Birch was breeding T positive albinos, and I was, it's a children's python, so it's kind of faded out anyway, and but these were pretty nice to look at. And there have been some that have popped up in the US, which I think are just, the lighter phase of children's python that are available through, the Red Desert line or whatever that the Barkers started. But yeah, I don't, there are some that look really nice, especially as babies, but then they just kind of turn normal. Whereas the true T positive albinos don't look normal as adults. They look different. They continue to look different. So if you did a side by side, it would be very clear, but it's hard when somebody's offering you a T positive albino for like half the price of a, what you would get for a true T positive albino. And then you're excited about the snake, so you don't want it to not be a T positive albino, so you're going to promote that. So I think that's how these things persist, is people get excited about a marketing name or something. I mean, there are some, like, Screamline Jungles, or what are some of those other, that are marketing the marketed names where
Wow.
people like, oh yeah, wow line, I want that line because it's always beautiful. And that may or may not be the case. You have the blue line albino or
The neon
chondros that
lines.
are like,
There's.
yeah, that are rarely blue. Sometimes you'll get a blue one to pop out of those blue line chondros, but for the most part they're normal, and you're paying $5,000 for a normal green tree python, which is kind of crazy to me. But yeah.
So to
Yeah.
get this right, when somebody writes down T positive, they're saying T positive albino. So
Yeah.
T positive children's python, I'm getting a T positive albino, right? Because he
That's
did
what it
write
should
albino.
be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's from Paul, so I mean,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah,
Then it would be a
it's
T positive
it's
albino.
genuine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where I think Nick got his as well,
Yes.
is from Paul. So
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
would be a good place to get them.
Oh yeah.
And they're the true single gene mutant, albino T positive albino animals.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
yeah.
I'm excited.
And they behave. You get hets, you get albinos, and you get normals. So
Nice.
I'm kind of wondering if you mix the ghost with the T positive, if you'd even be able to tell what the heck they are.
Well, I think so.
Yeah?
You would, yeah. And the ghosts. I mean, again, the ghosts is a marketing name, and sometimes you have some that are really nice looking, and others they might look normal 90% of the time, and just look really nice certain nights or whatever. But a T positive albino is going to look like a T positive albino no matter what. But I do think there can be some enhancements or some improvements on the depending on what line you're working with. I would imagine, like, if you got a T positive that was bred with these lighter line, you might have a different phenotype than if they were bred to the darker line. And maybe the darker line would be more attractive because, with an albino animal, sometimes when you have a lot of blacks and light colors, then it, I don't know, makes for a more vivid albino.
Just
hard to
better
say.
contrast.
Nice
Right.
contrast. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, that might be something to shoot for. Whereas just a faded, what some of these red desert children eye, that kind of marketing name, as adults, they almost look patternless. So I don't know that would look very good as an albino, either T positive or T negative albino. They just be kind of faded, light colored, so might not be as visually appealing. I mean, I love albino Darwin carpets because they have that, bold yellow and white contrast, whereas other albino lines, different albinos may not be that impressive looking,
You want to
albino
talk about
ball pythons are like, they're okay.
So the best albino that I will never produce, that is just blasphemy, has got to be either inlands or Bredleys that have had the albino from the Darwin bred into it. They're insanely gorgeous, like that. When you see that red on yellow, like, it's insane. Like, it's just so beautiful and so wrong in every single way, guys. Do not do it. It is wrong. Like, you should not be doing that. But holy crap, it's beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it always
look good.
Yeah.
It's a snake in a box, right? So in the end, you do you, but I still think it's completely wrong. But still really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I still think one of the most beautiful carpet pythons I ever saw was like a 7-way cross. Had like inland, jungle, coastal, diamond, all this stuff in it. It was just beautiful, gorgeous snake.
Are you, by curiosity, talking about some of Don Patterson's weird ass?
No, but those are great examples, but
like,
this was one in Australia that was
okay.
owned. I think Troy Kulagowski produced it, and it was in Deb's collection, so Deb Larks. But yeah, it was beautiful snake.
Oh, there's a lot of those. Like, there's a reason people do hybrids, right? Like, it just creates the most screwed up, beautiful, like, just it. I don't know. Some of them just come out with just the weirdest patterns, and it's just amazing to look at.
But the het albinos from those Brettles crosses are not very nice to look at. They're much uglier than the regular, the straight line bred phenotypes.
And then those are going to be sold off, and then they're going to become pure Brettles, or they're going to become pure something else, and then it's just going to muddy everything, and that is why you don't do it.
Yeah.
All right, rant over.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, gentlemen, are we coming to an end? Anything else you wanted to chat about, Shan, or are you good? How about you, Justin? Anything else you wanted to bring up before we close this out?
No, it's been fun chatting with you guys. Yeah, thanks for having me on, and congratulations on a year of keeping up with this. It's a challenge, isn't it?
That's true. It has been a whole year. I see the number 54, so we're at 54. Right. So basically, we're hitting our 1 year. And weren't you our first guest? I think you were.
Yeah. I think you had the introductory episode before me.
Yeah. And you had the worst recording ever. Not because of you, because of sound. It was terrible. Like, you go back and listen to that. We weren't using a mic. Everything sounded terrible. That's why we wanted to bring you back on, to have slightly better sounds. And of course, we're trying to film this, and I'm not even sure if it's working, but at least we're live. So by doing it live on YouTube has been our saving grace. For the episodes that don't work, we can just go take that and put it in the podcast.
Yeah.
So it guarantees you that if it's working live, we can have something that we're not losing the show. So
yeah, that is nice. Yeah, the technical difficulties with podcasts is never fun. Like, it's
lovely,
always
isn't it?
Seems to crop up, right? Yeah.
Well, Julander, do you want to just drop any of your information, your podcast, your way that somebody can come and buy you anything from you, anything else?
Sure. I mean, you can listen to my podcast with Rob Stone. It's called Reptile Fight Club, under the Morelia Python Radio umbrella, and is part of Eric and Owen's media army, if you want to call it that. And then I'm on Instagram. I post mainly herping photos or wild animals at JG Julander is my username. And then on Facebook, Justin Julander. Or I also have a website, Australian Addiction Reptiles, but I haven't been too good at keeping up on that, as most people do with websites in the day of social media. So I don't know. I need to get on there and revamp it a little bit, but it's there for some of the basic information from my Australian Addiction Reptiles company. So, but yeah, good stuff. I don't know if I should be offended that Michael wasn't here. He's been doing a great job. I've been enjoyed. I don't know of a younger guy that's more in tune or has that knowledge about all the different stuff going on in herpetoculture. It's really impressive. So tell him I'm a little offended he wasn't here, but it's great talking with you guys.
I appreciate you coming on. I mean, Michael's actually the one that wanted to bring you back on. He's like, I want to bring him back on. I want to talk about this. Then last minute, I'm like, okay, well, I'll come on. I'm just going to shoot the shit. We can just chat. I know you're a great guy that we can just chat about, right? But I had no idea where this conversation was going to go. And it kind of went where I expected it, right? We just chatted about just like you would do over a phone call or over a fire with a beer with a couple of buddies. And it's just great conversation, right? But I'm assuming that Michael wanted to bring you on to probably talk about, hellbenders or some tiny little hermit crab or some newts, right?
There you go.
he would have brought this in so many different places that I would not, right?
Yeah.
So, but I guess that's why it's a good combo, right? He brings up his weird ass shit. I try to always bring it back to snakes, and he goes into all his tangents. And but
there's a lot of cool reptiles out there. So and again, you guys have done a great job and have some really great shows. So keep it up.
I appreciate that. On another note for your podcast, I've always loved your Reptile Fight Club. I've always enjoyed it. I haven't been on in forever, but I think I've only been once initially, which was fun. I like your Grilling the Expert. I find it really, really interesting. I find it cool that you guys have kind of been able to go down two ways, because often you're doing a fight club, but realistically, you're just there to talk to the guest because it's a really smart person.
Right.
That's why you're doing it, right?
Right.
So I kind of like that you guys have done that. I think it's great. I hope you guys keep going. It's a great show. It's really entertaining. I just wanted to send you some flowers and throw them your way.
Well, Rob, that's all attributed to Rob. He's really done a great job since he's become the co-host to get some guests that I didn't know about or I wasn't aware of, and he's been doing the lion's share of the scheduling and the booking of the show. So all credit goes to Rob for that stuff. He's a great guy and a great co-host and great herping partner as well. He's fun to herp with. So
great job,
guy all
Rob.
around.
It's weird because both Shan, myself, or Michael, right? We're all Canadians, and we're so far from everybody that we listen to all the time, and we've had them as guests and all that. And it's weird because at some point you almost feel like you're friends, but we've never met. And I'm thinking is man, I'd love to go to Australia with these guys. I'd love to do this and all that, and all that. And as much as I'd love to make it happen, I don't know how the heck I'd make it happen. I've got kids running around. I've got everything. We've got lives. We've got work and all that. But man, someday I think it'd be the coolest thing ever to just, I don't know, either have a podcast reunion where everybody meets up or go do a big trip or something like that. I just think
Yeah.
it would be just the coolest thing. You give
I would
enough of
love.
a heads up, I think it could happen.
I
Yeah.
want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't have any kids that are small, so I'm ready.
You have no excuse, Shan.
You pull the trigger, Dom. I'm going, but even going to the States, I've wanted to, like when you talk about it, Justin and Rob Stone talk about going and herping in the States. I would love to do that.
Yeah,
That's
you guys
fun.
can't be too far from like Carpet Fest at
No,
Eric's
we're
house,
not.
right?
Eric's house is not far.
You're a
It's
lot
definitely
closer than I
driving
am.
distance. Yeah, it's like a 5 or 6 hour driving, but
Oh yeah,
it's
nothing.
always something else, right? Like you're planning on doing something, and then all of a sudden my stupid heat pump dies, and that's another
Right.
$5,000, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I was already
where
hurt, and now I need to find another $5,000. Like, you really think I'm going to be able to go spend like to
right.
go even a weekend to Carpet Fest? If it's 6 or 7 hours, you're looking at over $1,000 or more, right? Because you're going to be
Right,
renting
right.
hotels, you're going to be doing all these things, right? So, and as much as I was considering, like we were considering going to the West shows, like so shows in Alberta, Vancouver, anyway, the West End shows, which I'm supposed to say. I didn't even bring up our command style. What the heck is that? Help me out here.
Are
Sponsors.
basically our sponsor.
Yes, there you go. So, because that's Michael's job, right? So,
Yeah.
to everybody listening, after 2 hours and 35, Reptile Fight Club is brought to you by Cornell's World. Thank you very much. They have heat pads. They have not even heat panels. They have heat emitters. They have every single thing you could ever want for your reptiles. Great guys, great show. Great show. What the heck am I talking about? Great panels. And again, this is why Michael does it.
Michael,
Go
you're
to
hired.
cornellsworld.com. Everything is on there. I have no idea if there is a rebate. I have no clue on any of that, but Michael will be your first line for any of that information. And we thank Cornell's World for sponsoring. And the second thing is the Western Canadian Reptile Show.
Yes.
I have no idea when the next show is, but we'd love to see you there. And
August.
we thank you for sponsoring us. There you go. How was that? Like, no idea what I'm doing because, again, not my part of the job. So,
Yeah.
anyway, that was out there. Still going back to it anyway, it would be great. We'd love to do it one day. We'd love to go see some people. And it's definitely something that's in the plans. I've always thought that Tinley would be cool, but I feel like a Carpet Fest would be cooler because I don't want, if you go to a show, I don't really want to go there for a show. I want to go there to just chat with people that I've been talking for so long.
Yeah.
So I just think it would be really cool. And I hope it happens one day.
Yeah. Got to make it happen.
So, but I don't think there's a Carpet Fest this year, is there? Have they decided or?
Not that I know of.
Like
I haven't heard anything. So yeah, it's always a tricky thing.
Because if we went to either one, it would be in Philadelphia, right, or wherever it is, Philly, wherever it is, because it's like a 5 or 6 hour drive for us, so it's totally doable.
I mean, that's something you could just drive there for the night of, and then get one night a hotel and drive back the next day. You know, it's not or stay a little longer and herp with us.
Pass out in Eric's pool and then just find a body in the morning. You know,
yep, sleep in his yard. Yeah,
I go down for the races, so I'm easily able to do it.
Yeah. Just got to make it happen. Hopefully it happens again. You know, I guess that's the question is, will Eric put on a Carpet Fest again? And
I mean, will Eric still be alive next year? Who knows, right? Like,
right. He's been doing a lot better. I hear he's lost a small child in weight, you know.
So Lisa says Texas. I want to go to the
Texas is far. Like that's not close for us.
So Lisa, Texas for us is really far. It's probably like almost 24-hour drive, almost.
Right.
Yeah, that's
when
happening.
You fly into and rent a car or something.
Yeah, but like, man, flights are insane. Like we looked at just flying to Alberta, which is, well, it's a pretty long flight, right? Let's be honest.
I think, Dom, it's not the same thing to the States because I can get a flight from Augsburg, New York to Florida for $200 US.
Yeah, but you got to drive to Ogdensburg, and then you got to pay for your car.
Ogdensburg is 5 minutes away from my place. It's 5 minutes from my place. Okay. Seriously. But
you live
what I'm
in the
saying-
middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, right beside the states.
But what I'm saying is, it's more expensive, I think, through Canadian airfares to travel
fair
to
enough.
Canada. It's very expensive.
There
for
you
some
go.
reason.
Just drive down to Shan's, grab a plane out of
Let's
New
do
York,
it.
and you're there. Yeah, no big
No,
deal.
that's so true. Like my brother when he got engaged, we ended up doing a trip to Myrtle Beach, and everybody was cheap and had no money. So what we did was we rented a minivan, drove to Ogdensburg, exactly that, and took a flight from Ogdensburg to Myrtle Beach, and it was something stupid like $48 there, $48 back.
Wow.
It was insane. Like it was the cheapest way was just to do that, and we got 20 guys over there and just. I'm not going to say what happened in Myrtle Beach, but it was an insane weekend. It was beautiful. We had a lot of good memories, and but it is cheaper to fly inside. But it's funny because it doesn't replicate to Canada. Like if I fly from a certain area in Canada back, it's ridiculous. Like we're talking about like when we checked this to fly
$800.
to eight or $900 there and back though.
Right.
But still, like that's ridiculous. $800. That's got to be at least $13 American, right? So it's a lot of money.
Yeah, Texas Carpet Fest is really cool. I think
cool
the big draw there is it's at Reptilandia, which is incredible.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
The only thing I regret, well, I don't know if I regret it because we had fun herping, but saw some like an Texas indigo and a rock rattlesnake, which I hadn't seen before, so that was cool. But we got there a little bit late because we chose to herp instead of going early to Carpet Fest. But I would have liked to explore Reptilandia a little more. That was a really cool place. Yeah, I'd second Lisa's suggestion to go to that one. It's really amazing.
I just don't want to go solo. See, he doesn't want to go.
Yeah, basically, Shan needs me by his side. I'm his emotional puppy,
right?
Well, it sounds like with the cheap flights out of New York, you don't have many excuses, Dom. You just got to make it happen.
What about the 13-year-old child that lives with me?
13's basically they're fine. They need a little independence, right?
All right. What about my 19-year-old son?
Yeah, they're a little more problematic. No.
Get my wife to babysit.
There you go. Yeah, take them with you.
Happen. Come on,
make a trip. Make a family trip out of it.
No, we don't want to do that.
I promised my kids a trip, but they want to do a cruise, so might be something different.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've been trying to close this out for 50 minutes, so I think we're doing pretty good. Shan, you want to drop your info?
Yeah. So it's Shan Melanson. You can either reach me on Facebook or Instagram. I've been doing the Instagram a little bit more now. So yeah, that's basically it. You might see Snake Frenzy once in a while, but I usually tend to stick to Shan Melanson. So more than willing to chat about anything. So snake related anyway.
Yeah. I'll if anybody's got any questions about anything else than snakes, just reach out to Shan. He'll be happy to talk about it. Justin, thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, I love talking to you. You're a great guy, full of knowledge, and sometimes it's just nice. Maybe once a year we'll bring you on just to chat about absolutely nothing and everything.
That sounds good to me.
So if I can ask you a favor, just stay on until after we log off, just to make sure that it uploads. To everybody, thanks for logging on. Really appreciate it. To the people that were live as well, I appreciate it. Reptile Rejects. The live show is obviously live usually every Sunday around 7 or 8. And that show usually appears a week later on all the podcasts. We're always a week early. If you are online, please click the little buttons, subscribe, all those fun stuff. Press the bell. I have no idea what it does, but apparently it's good. And if you're on the podcast, I appreciate it as well. Subscribe as well. And I don't know, tell a friend so that we can have 2 subscribers. And on that last note, thank you, everybody. Have yourself a great night, and we will see you next week. Ciao.
Cheers.